across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. It's just coming up to 3 minutes past 10 o'clock, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connected device, thank you, as always, for joining us. I know I keep saying it, but we really are always very grateful for you taking the time to listen to us, to watch us, and to take part. Can't wait to hear your thoughts, actually, on quite a few of the stories today. We always put out a question on social media, but actually, there are three big topics I still want to hear from you on today. And indeed, as you know, you get to decide what you want to call in about, so you will make that choice. If you do miss anything from the show, go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. And I can stop saying that at the beginning of the show. Coming up in this hour, we are going to be talking about what's been going on in the Middle East overnight, what the implications. Oh, yeah, oil prices going up for everybody. Reform UK moving even further ahead than Labour in the polls. 9-point lead nationally, but many are predicting that actually when it comes to the Makerfield by-election, it will be Burnham for Labour that will win. But what does that mean in terms of where Keir Starmer is? Is he going to face a leadership challenge immediately or not? We'll talk to Dan Hodges about that. Meanwhile, of course, the Prime Minister has been busy talking about social media and children. Various announcements there. We will talk about that. Plus, is the White House preparing to buy the Chagos Islands, scuppering that deal with Mauritius? It will save us a fair few quid. I'll be very much in favour of that. And Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy says he personally told the US Vice President, his big chum, J.D. Vance, that he was wrong over comments he made about the murder of teenager Henry Novak. I want to talk about all of that, plus all the extraordinary fallout from that and the number of organisations who say, well, simply this anti-racism drive hasn't gone far enough. Yeah, the thing about anti-racism is it's racism and really shouldn't be going far at all. All that to discuss, plenty more besides. Delighted to say that joining me for the show today is Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Government Advisor. Morning. Morning. Very happy Monday to you. Yeah. Have you been on social media this morning?
I have.
Well,
it's very bad of me, but I have.
Well, very bad. Who are we kidding? It's one of the first things we do. The alarm goes off. What's been going on in the world? I mean, I'm not looking at TikTok videos. I mean, what's happened who's bombed who overnight? Yeah. Well, that is very much a subject for the Prime Minister, particularly related to under 16-year-olds. And we'll come to that in just a moment. But I'm gonna put the question out now, which is actually not related to the first two stories I want to talk about, but I know a lot of you still want to get in touch on this, but David Lammy telling the US Vice President he was wrong to blame Henry Novak's death on the mass invasion of migrants. We also had Peter Hegseth, the Secretary of War, speaking on the D-Day anniversary, talking about all the problems we've got on that issue. Now, I'm with J.D. Vance on this one. I think it's a massive, massive issue, not just illegal, but the mass handing out of visas to people from far afield to come to this country, even though they're not net contributors to this country. I don't think that is the cause of Henry Novak's death. We know what the cause of that was. That was one man stabbing him 5 times and then possibly his treatment by the police in the wake of that. I want to know what your reaction is, though, to David Lammy and to J.D. Vance's comments. And particularly also, I mean, the Prime Minister over the weekend, very, very, very keen to say that the Americans shouldn't interfere in our politics. Yep, that wasn't how they were when it came to either Trump's election first time round, second time round, or indeed 2020 murder of George Floyd, when, whoa, goodness me, they couldn't stop making comments and interfering in US politics. Love to hear your thought on that. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost $1. Standard network rate message. First up there, I do want to talk about what's happened overnight in the Middle East. If you listen to the BBC, as far as you're aware, Israel has just completely randomly decided to send missiles to Iran again. What were they thinking? This, of course, after Israel, out of the blue, decided to start bombing Beirut and southern Lebanon. I mean, it's an absolute mystery to everybody why they're doing that, unless you've been paying attention, which apparently even their Middle East correspondents haven't. You get to it in about the 6th or 8th paragraph that, oh, is this in retaliation to years of missiles from Hezbollah into Israel? Oh, yes, it is. And is this in relation to years of threats from Iran and attacks by Iran, paid for by Iran, from not just Hezbollah, but Hamas and the Houthis and everyone else. Claire Pearsall, it still blows my mind every single day that we have to have these conversations about, oh, Israel striking overnight. Israel retaliated against Iranian missile strikes. The missile strikes were retaliation for Israel bombing Beirut because of the Hezbollah forces there who have been bombing Israel. I mean, it's a complicated... And people say, well, it goes back way before October the 7th. Yes, I'm sure it does. But at the end of the day, you've got a massive terrorist army, the biggest in the world, the most equipped and dangerous in the world. It's a drug-running, child sex trafficking, you name it, horrific organisation. And if we could blow up every single member of the Hezbollah, the world would be a better place. Certainly a better place for anyone living in Lebanon who would be glad to be rid of Hezbollah. Donald Trump had ordered, basically, Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, not to retaliate. Look, your shield worked, no one got killed. Israel's retaliation was against military sites in Iran. Last time I looked, that was completely allowable in a war. I'm not quite sure what we would do in this scenario. Yvette Cooper, our Foreign Secretary, has said, you know, people need to show restraint. If we were bombed, would we be showing restraint at this point? I'm not sure we would.
Well, sensible people wouldn't be, no, but with Yvette Cooper, you never kind of know which way she's going to blow on this one. So I'm glad that it's not the UK that is under the same threat as Israel, because I think we would... It is a matter of luck and geography, but I think we would be in a worse situation. Look, this is always a complicated situation. I don't see how you can expect Israel to just put down arms and say, OK, we're going to stop, when they have a barrage of missiles coming across them on a frequent basis. And Iran have already said this is going to be a continuous week of strikes.
Well, there you are then.
There you go.
You know, there you go then. In terms of, I mean, look, at the end of the day, you know, Netanyahu's government and them are largely provided by the Americans. They provide, you know, support for the Iron Dome, which keeps them going. The only reason you do not see mass Israeli deaths is because of the Iron Dome, because of their defences, not because of the lack of missiles coming, whether they've been coming from Gaza or Hamas or from Iran. There's this concern, and we constantly hear this from Trump, that we are close to a ceasefire, which is good for everybody, assuming the terms are good, leaving the Iranian government in place and carrying on with their development of a nuclear weapon. I'm not entirely sure is where we should end this war once it's been started. But it looks, from all accounts, we're told that Donald Trump is very, very angry with Netanyahu. But where does this leave the rest of us?
In a state of flux, with oil prices still going to continue to rise. You've got Trump, who has underestimated what he was taking on in the Middle East. So he didn't have a plan of exit. So he's gone into this not entirely understanding the field he was playing in. You're never going to get what we would consider to be normal treatment from the likes of Iran. You're just not. The mullahs are never going to play as you see fit in other countries.
None of their actions suggest they are close to a deal.
No, of course they don't. Of course they don't.
And you can have a deal at any time. The same with Ukraine. You can have peace at any time as long as you surrender.
Yes. Yeah, as long as it's on their terms, then they're quite willing to have that ceasefire.
It's very interesting. I think we'd be talking about Ukraine quite a lot today if it wasn't for what had happened overnight. Also, just allied to this, Donald Trump apparently, one of the things he's considering in terms of basically shoring up US defences against China and Iran is buying the Chagos Islands so they could take full control of Diego Garcia, the UK-US military base, end uncertainty about it, and save us a load of money, guaranteeing its safety. This airbase is absolutely crucial for wars in Iran, absolutely crucial for preventing China having control of that, which they would via Mauritius. Mauritius is totally, basically bought and owned by China now. I think something like 20% of their investment, external investment, is coming from China. I mean, come on, who are we kidding? They do China's bidding now. This would be a win-win for us, wouldn't it? We save a fortune, and the Chagos Islands, Diego Garcia base saved.
I'm not so sure, because I think the deal that Keir Starmer has struck, deal in inverted commas, would still have to go through, and that money would still have to go in. The Americans would then have to negotiate with Mauritius.
The deal never has to go through until a deal goes through.
Well, I think that is some of the paperwork. I think when you delve down into the details, I don't think it's as straightforward as the Americans
because our officials are so rubbish. They have managed to draft something that means we can't get out of it.
Basically, yes. That man who is
and
the
why am I surprised by this?
Detail, that lawyer who is all over it.
Are these the same people who do our defence procurement deals and pay 3 times as much for stuff that doesn't work?
Oh, quite possibly. Quite possibly. And we can't afford the things that we actually
Seriously,
need.
this country is run by chimps. I mean, it really is. Actually, chimps would do a better job. They really would. Let's talk about social media. Keir Starmer is attending a meeting this morning of AI chiefs, tech chiefs over in London. He's desperate to get a load of investment, wants us to be all part of the AI revolution, while he is making sure through every policy that he has that we have the highest possible costs for energy, particularly for electricity, which is what is vital for AI. I mean, left hand, right hand, not a clue. I mean, I don't think he knows what his left hand is doing. But we read at the front page of the Times today, who are obsessed with this topic. Sky News, BBC and the Times are literally obsessed with the social media ban. So Keir Starmer is preparing to announce a ban on harmful social media platforms for under 16s. Now, a lot of this is about him trying to appear dynamic and, his legacy, and basically ahead of the Makefield by-election next week, just being, look, I can get things done. It would be a very popular move. 75% of the public say they support this. I mean, you can get 75% of the public to support anything if you tell them this will solve all your problems. I mean, I would say, 75% of parents need to do a better job of parenting and policing their kids' use social media. But, I'm old-fashioned, as you know, on these issues. He's looking to outlaw, we're told, the use of high-risk platforms, opening the door for children to access some safer forms of social media, so not a complete ban like in Australia, which we know hasn't worked because 60 or 70% of kids are still on social media after a blanket ban was instituted in December. In the last few months, he has announced something a little bit different, which is basically... they've announced an AI tool for CVs paid for by the government, which is absurd because, of course, we've already got these things, they're already free. But he's confirmed a ban on young people sending and receiving sexually explicit images. But that's the headline, but it's not true. No. He's saying he wants to see a ban on this. So if a child tries to take a selfie, a sexually explicit image, on their device, tech companies can have device controls using AI, which prevent them not even from sending it to someone, but actually taking it. Now, the majority of images, sexual images of children on the internet are actually taken by themselves, often persuaded, coerced by somebody online who has managed to get to them that way. This is something that Jess Phillips, the Home Office Minister, resigned. She said it's one of the reasons she resigned over. I think it was actually more about her own personal ambitions, saying that she'd been asking the Prime Minister for this for over a year, couldn't even get a response for a year. But he's basically said, if the tech companies don't do this, I will do this. I will institute the ban. The thing is, this technology has been available for a good few years, and he could have done it at any time, but he's just suddenly decided to do it now.
And the sort of timing of it is really, really interesting, given that there are big things happening where his leadership may or may not be challenged in the next, I don't know, months and a half. You wonder if it's politically expedient for him to do so. But also, why have the sort of measure, we're going to ask you nicely to not allow it, and then we're going to make you not allow it, but no provision as to how that actually happens? Why not just make it so from the start? And as you say, there are already tools out there that they can use. There's already pieces of legislation available to him to be able to stop those companies from doing it and add on whichever sanction you like. But ultimately, social media for children should come under the guise of parenting, as you've said. And the government suggesting what is a good time to have a smartphone or not shouldn't be a conversation. We shouldn't have the government telling you what an optimum age is.
Well, the thing is, but we do have ages, which you're allowed to buy, things that are harmful, various drugs, alcohol.
But do we need the government to say that?
Well, apparently we do, because a lot of parents aren't doing it. Parents and schools are saying, we can't do this on our own, we need help. And it's much easier for your kid not to have a smartphone or not to be on whatever they're on this. But again, whatever I say, it's like Facebook, they're not on Facebook. They're not even on. I tried WhatsApping my teenager. I don't get anything. I don't know what they're on. Snapchat, TikTok, whatever the hell it is they're doing this week. She's old enough, it's not my business anymore. And it's never been an issue. So, but but there is this thing that, I mean, if she'd got her phone out at the table, I'd look like I've got wrong family, you know. But this is the thing. You know, they're on all these different all these different sites, and they're doing a lot of this stuff. A lot of parents are on the same things, frankly. But you know, it is reasonable, I think, for a government to say, look, the evidence is clearly harmful. For instance, the guidance. I know people myself who say, you know, oh no, this is really educational video for my child. Your child is 2. Your child should never be seeing a screen at all at the age of 2. And this is really well documented, and the government has issued some guidance on this recently. But it shouldn't be guidance. I mean, literally, you shouldn't be giving, you shouldn't be giving your kid alcohol at 2. You shouldn't be giving your kid a screen at 2. You need to be giving your kid a book at 2, and colouring books, and jigsaws and blocks, and teaching them that way. I mean, and people are living in cloud cuckoo land for thinking, oh, their children, they can't just go, oh, look, what a surprise, my kid's really unhappy and miserable because my kid is basically sat looking at a screen. My kid has no concentration span whatsoever, can barely read because they've been watching cartoons and stupid videos on TikTok or YouTube for the last 2 years. Well, imagine everyone's surprise. I mean, I'm sorry, this is not rocket science. I don't have a problem with governments telling us what works and what's not. I think we have too little telling people what works and what doesn't in families, because there's stuff that clearly works. Bedtimes, routine, healthy meals. There's stuff that works and there's stuff that doesn't. And too many parents do stuff that doesn't. But the question is, should it be guidance? Should it be a law? And how do you make sure, when it comes to things like social media, how do you prove that someone's under 16 or under 18 as opposed to someone above, in which case you're interfering with adults' right to do what they want on the internet.
And I think that's my concern about it. And the government tends to use a really broad brush when it comes to these things, and it'll just say, these are the recommendations from this government. We all know that eating an entire packet of biscuits isn't good for us. And people will put on weight. I love them, that's why I don't have them at home. But I don't need a government to start putting laws down in place. I know that. My child knows that. I know not to feed, and obviously now my child is older.
Instead, we'll get the government to fund fat jabs for those people when they get fat.
But this is the unintended consequence, isn't it? So what would be next?
Well, exactly. All I know is, the Prime Minister's tweeted out, this government will not stand by while children are put at risk online. Literally has. Have you heard of grooming gangs, Prime Minister? A lot of that was happening online as well. Today I'm calling on the tech companies to introduce device-level controls to prevent children from taking, sharing or viewing nude images, and if they don't act, we will. Again, could have been done 2 years ago. Some really simple stuff that does protect kids and can be done really easily, and it's about requiring action from the tech companies. I don't think the tech companies should be allowed full access to our kids. And one of the giveaways is they don't allow their own kids on the tech.
Precisely.
Their kids' schools are all pencil and paper. There's a reason for that, because these algorithms are dangerous. But, I'd love to hear I really want to hear your thoughts on this, because we're constantly told the public, parents in particular, they want to have these bans. Should we have these bans? What should the ban be? What should the limitation be? Is it about parenting? Is it about the government stepping in? Is it about the tech companies? They go, oh, we can't control the algorithms for kids. They control the algorithms 100%. What you see is almost entirely down to what that algorithm wants you to see. In which case, how can they not do that and make sure that children are protected from seeing the stuff? Frankly, I'd like to be protected from some of the nonsense that gets pushed into my timeline that I've specifically not chosen to see. I want to hear your thoughts on this. 0344 499 1000. Please get your calls in on this, because we had this big consultation and now they're responding to it. There's no way they've read through everything for the consultation. They're having another consultation. I mean, seriously, another consultation where they're going to be getting experts to announce, to look this through. But it seems to me that this is going to be a knee-jerk reaction. This is going to be something to sort of try and be popular, do something that the public like, whether it works or not, and whether it impinges on civil liberties. Because remember, the public liked lockdowns. And then the public a few years ago are going, why are we paying all this money in taxes and not getting decent public services, and everything's in debt because we basically paid people to stay at home? The public likes a lot of things. It doesn't necessarily mean it's what's good for us, what we want and what we need. A lot of people would ban an awful lot of things that you like. They would, if you smoke, they would ban that. If you have like alcohol, they would ban that. If you go to a nightclub, they would ban that. Cycling, they would ban that. Cars, they would ban that. This whole let's just ban things tends not to work out too well. I want to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. I also, of course, want to hear your thoughts on how the horrific death of Henry Novak has continued to dominate the news, as much as, the BBC and others would like it not to. We had both... We had Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War. We had J.D. Vance, the US Vice President, giving their tuppence worth on Henry Novak's death. J.D. Vance saying that he blamed his death on the mass invasion of migrants, which is quite something. He accused European allies of failing to stand up to the politics of self-hatred and the mass migration of people who despise the West. He wrote that on Friday. Now, the man who killed Henry Novak is Vikram Digwa, and he was, born in this country. Of course, he will have been the child of immigrants, ultimately, or grandchild. He says, Novak died the same way as civilization dies, abandoned, handcuffed by authorities who neither trusted nor cared for him, and accused of hate crimes he did not commit. I have to say, I do agree with him on that.
I think there's some valid points that he makes. I think where he's wrong is relating mass migration to this particular case. I think if you're going to criticise the United Kingdom, and there's plenty for him to do so, you need to get your facts right on that case.
But isn't it about
two separate
the
subjects?
fact that actually it has been mass migration or a massive change in our demographics that has led to this sort of hysteria on the part of let's face it, white lefty liberals about needing to integrate and needing to adjust our values, our rules, our norms, our customs, our traditions, our laws, everything, to people who have either they themselves or their families have arrived recently.
Yes, and you can have that conversation separately, and that's a valid conversation to have. I think specifically to link it to this case was the wrong thing to do, and it then minuses off the arguments that he did get right, which is the ones about mass migration.
And there is a massive link to that, isn't it? David Lammy said he had a phone call with J.D. Vance, their mates. I don't know why. This is genuinely, this is a mystery for the ages, this is. Why anyone would choose to have contact with the Justice Secretary. Because J.D. Vance, whether you agree with him or not, he's a clever guy. Yeah. J.D. Vance, clearly a clever... Lammy, not... No. I'm sorry. I know Lammy on paper, the Oxford...
No, I know, but in person.
In person, you don't know. But basically, he told him he was wrong in a phone call, very amicable. He said they agreed to disagree. But, Keir Starmer, he accused the Vice President of using Mr Novak's murder to create further division. Mind you, he accuses everybody, other than himself, of trying to create further division. Given that awful video of Henry Novak was put out with the permission... in fact, the encouragement of of Henry Novak's family. There was like an 8-minute statement read by his father, Henry, on the steps of the court after the sentencing of Vikram Digwa. He knew what the impact would be of people seeing that. He wanted people to see the full horror of what happened. Now, there are other videos. We since had the 999 call made by the killer's brother. As you can hear him almost you can almost hear the clicks in his voice, as he makes up the lies and the reaction from the police. Oh, yeah, that's what I wanted. I needed to know the rate. Yeah. Right, you've asked him 3 times. You finally told me the P word that you said. Great, now we'll get a car to you, because now we've got a racist to arrest. I mean, Keir Starmer to basically say, that you shouldn't get, that the Americans shouldn't get involved in criticising what's going on in Britain. They were all over the murder of George Floyd, all over Donald Trump's, involvement, sending Labour Party apparatchiks going over to work on the campaign for whatever her name was, Kamala Harris. I try to forget who she is, as the world should. I mean, it's a bit rich. I don't have an issue with them giving their opinion. I mean, it's like they were quite happy to have Obama come over and tell us we go to the back of the queue if we voted for Brexit. My thing is they're allowed to say what they want to say, and we're allowed to tell them to do one if we so choose. But I think it's a bit rich for the Prime Minister to say, oh, you're stoking up division and you have no right to get involved in British politics when we get involved in American politics all the time.
But these are allies of the UK as well. And if you can't have your friends speaking their minds, then what can you do?
Yeah.
And it's fair. They can have their point of view. And as you say, we don't have to accept it. We don't have to agree with it. They are entitled to it. And we did wade into the whole George Floyd argument where we needn't have. It was nothing to do with this
They would talk about things like suspending exports if that could be used by the American police. I mean, complete misunderstanding of the situation. And by the way, this is the thing everyone forgets. The George Floyd murder wasn't even racist. It was a nasty, violent cop who had done this to other people before, including white people. It had nothing to do with race, and it had nothing to do with Britain, nothing to do with our policing, nothing to do with our race relations, nothing at all. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What do you make of David Lammy telling the Vice President of the United States he was wrong to blame Henry Novak's death on the mass invasion of migrants? I mean, this wasn't about a migration issue, really, was it? What was this about? And does it have any relation to, again, these words from, I think, very, very poignant words from J.D. Vance, talking about, this is the way a civilization dies, abandoned, handcuffed by authorities, and they who neither trusted nor cared for Henry Novak and accused of hate crimes that he did not commit. I mean, we're being accused of hate crimes all the time as a nation. The empire, slavery, we're the first empire to end slavery. We're going to have Winston Churchill taken off our banknotes because a little focus group of 119 people apparently thought it was all a bit, it was all a bit empire-y and a bit out of date. So we're going to have, I don't know, a tree frog or something on our notes. I mean, we are a nation where people get arrested for putting up our national flag, for God's sake. But put up a Palestinian flag or a rainbow flag, there you go, have a great time. I'm sorry, but he's right about this. Mm-hmm. We are talking about civilizational death by the way that the self-flagellation. I mean, there's a brilliant book by Sadgad, called Suicidal Empathy. We are literally committing suicide as a civilization, not just Britain, America too, France, Germany, Italy, all doing it as well. This is not happening in any other parts of the world. They all think we're insane, as indeed our leaders are. I want to hear your thoughts on this. 0344 499 1000. Your thoughts on what's going on between Iran and Israel. Also, your thoughts on social media bans. Should there be one? Shouldn't there? Get in touch. Number to ring is 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
We are going to remove all forms of DEI from policing. We will also, and we're the only, the Labour Party have not committed to this, the Tory Party have not committed to this. Reform are also taking the view that we would immediately ensure that nobody gets to carry deadly weapons on our streets unless you're law enforcement. So I don't care what religion you are. I don't care how ceremonial, in quotes, your dagger is.
So you would
not get to carry. There will be no religious exemption.
Okay. So you would stop the Kirpan being carried.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 10:32 is the time. Let's take one call, then we're going to hear from Dan Hodges on what is going on with social media bans and the Prime Minister, etc., etc. First up, though, let's hear from Stuart, who is in Wigan. Hello, Stuart. What do you make of... I think you want to talk about what J.D. Vance had to say.
Well, I have a couple of points, actually.
Yeah.
But what J.D. Vance had to say, I've no issue with whatsoever.
Yep.
At all.
You agree with him?
The only people that are stoking problems in this country are Starmer and the Labour Party, with the fact that every time anything goes against what they think, we're all right-wing scumbags.
This is true.
That's it. End of.
Yeah.
There's trouble. There is trouble coming in this country. I don't want it like nobody else does, but he's causing it.
Yep.
But can I just say as well, George Floyd.
Yeah.
Right? You keep going on about this copper. Now, you might remember, like, I have no time whatsoever for coppers, or Labour Party, or Greens. But I have a bit of sympathy for this copper, copper.
Derek Chauvin.
No. George Floyd was a druggy criminal.
Yeah.
That was drugged up to his eyeballs. Yeah. The copper used a legal move. It's nobody else's fault that he didn't do what the copper said, and they had to keep him on the floor. It's not like he wasn't violent.
No, he was wrong, and the world's a better place. I'm sorry without him. I'm sorry, but he was murdered by a police officer who was kneeling on his neck, and he didn't need to carry on doing that. There were plenty of coppers. He was lying there completely. I'm Stuart. I'm sorry. I'm not even thinking this is a matter of opinion.
No.
You're completely wrong on this.
No, I'm not.
He did once you got him handcuffed, you do not need to be kneeling on someone's neck who's saying I can't breathe. Sorry, full stop.
He died because he was drugged up.
There's a lot of evidence. He was very, very drugged up. But he's still then on his neck for, what was it, 9 minutes? No, Stuart, I'm sorry, you cannot have time for the police, but at the end of the day, I mean, sorry, that was a murder. What's interesting was it wasn't a racist murder. Just happened to be a black guy on this occasion.
Yeah.
But either way, do you...
Labour are quick enough to jump on that bandwagon, aren't they?
They were literally hanging off it with bells on, for goodness sake. Stuart, thank you for your call. You know, I love hearing from you. Thank you very much. I'm just going to get a couple of messages, then we'll take another break and hear from Dan Hodges. But Robin says, David Lammy is wrong every time he opens his mouth. I mean, there is that. Diana says, I've no time for David Lammy. He hasn't got a brain cell. Vance is right, says Julie. It happened because of immigration, DEI and two-tier policing. How on this planet could a dying man be arrested? Paul says the answer is obvious. The man who killed Henry was British. He was born in Britain. He's not a migrant. End of. Well, this is it. He was British. Is still British. I loathe Vance and Lammy equally, says Callum. Both are wrong on this. The truth is somewhere in the middle. Often the case. Chris says Lammy and the rest of the appalling government are an embarrassment to the UK. If he is the best Labour can muster for his important position, then the Labour Party should cease to exist. 10:35 is the time. We'll take a quick break. Then we're going to talk to Mail on Sunday commentator Dan Hodges about how all of this plays out for the Prime Minister. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:36 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pearsall is still with me as well. And we're joined right now by Dan Hodges. He's a commentator on The Mail on Sunday. A very good morning to you, Dan.
Morning to you.
Thank you for joining us. I must just ask you, first of all, I mean, there's so much to talk about, but just in terms of this battle that's been going on between the Brits and the Americans over the horrific murder of Henry Novak and the treatment by the police, dominated all of the news last week. And we've certainly had, David Lammy saying in the Sunday media round yesterday that he told J.D. Vance, his big mate, the VP, that his criticisms of what's going on in Britain is wrong. We've had the Prime Minister hitting out at the Americans, saying they're using Henry Novak's murder to create further division. I mean, to be fair, he accuses everyone who even mentions the topic, other than Henry Novak, his parents himself, and himself, of creating further division. Do you think that both Lammy and or Starmer are right?
I think on this instance, and specifically in relationship to J.D. Vance, yes. Because, and I think you kind of touched on it just a couple of minutes before. I think the thing that was most damaging and most dangerous and most divisive and frankly wrong in what J.D. Vance said was in the way he tried, well, he didn't try, I mean, he directly linked Henry Novak's death with mass migration. And I think this is one of the aspects of this whole appalling case that there hasn't been enough sort of focus on. I mean, I said this last week, which is a big part of the debate we have around these issues of migration and race is where we are constantly saying it is important for migrant communities to do everything they can to integrate here in the UK, to play by the rules, to observe the law, to be good, loyal British citizens. And I agree with that. I don't think you can find a better model of that than our Sikh community.
This is true.
And I think that was the thing that was most dangerous in what Vance was trying to do, is he was effectively trying to drive a wedge between people, and not just migrant communities in general, but obviously in this case, because of the specific nature of this case, the Sikh community. And I think that was completely.
But isn't it interesting? If we're saying something positive, people are always allowed to talk about a whole community. So, the Sikh community are very integrated and very low criminality, high employment, blah blah blah. Jewish community very well integrated. Strong assimilation and contribution to society. Indian community. But if you say, oh, well, actually, many people from Muslim countries, and again, I don't think there is a Muslim community. I'm not entirely convinced by this idea of any community, because otherwise I have to be the atheist, white, middle-class women community. I don't know. What is my community? But if you're saying anything negative, well, a failure, low employment rates, low income, low English speaking, low achievement at school, I mean, you can go into all these things. If you say anything negative about a particular community, that's racist. But it's perfectly fine to talk about a community in a positive way. I judge people as individuals. This one man was a criminal.
I think that's absolutely right. And obviously, whenever we're talking about sort of these large community blocks, we're obviously by definition generalising.
You're not representing white men right now. I'm not representing white women. He doesn't represent Sikh people. He's just a nasty, horrible, violent man who happens to be Sikh.
Exactly, and that's the point. But that is not what J.D. Vance was saying.
But isn't his
specifically and deliberately? Because it's an argument that J.D. Vance likes to make consistently for reasons.
But isn't his point? I'm not inside J.D. Vance's head. I'm not sure I'd want to be. But isn't his point when he said about that where civilization dies, is that actually mass migration, not specifically referring to any particular act of violence, but mass migration generally has led to a situation where there's been an obsession about making sure that diversity is our strength, undermining British values and British identity to make other people who've arrived here feel at home. That mass migration has changed our country. It's changed our politics. It's changing our foreign policy right at this moment in the Middle East, for instance. That actually mass migration has undermined British values. It has undermined social cohesion. It's undermined our economy as well, against what every lie they told us. And that has led to a situation where police think that a so-called anti-racism drive is more important than just doing their job.
But I think again, this is part of the problem. I mean, JD Vance is, whatever you think about him, he's a clever man and he's an articulate man. And what we've seen in we're doing it now. We've seen he made a statement and suddenly everybody's wandering around saying, oh, well, you know what? He didn't actually mean this. What he actually meant was that he knew exactly what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was saying. And as I say, when he introduced, in a way he didn't have to, the issue of mass migration and aligned that with the death of Henry Novak, he was making a particular and deliberate and, in my view, divisive point. And we all know what he was saying.
OK.
So I don't know why we have to try and do this thing of second guess him and, in a sense, try and dig JD Vance out of the hole that he's dug for himself. OK,
that's interesting. And in terms of Keir Starmer and him basically, criticising the Americans getting involved in their politics, lots of conversation over the last week, like, well, hold on a minute, that Labour Party has been massively involved in this issue. Let's talk, though, about things closer to home. Latest polling nationally showing that reform is on the up, although, interestingly, quite a lot of disapproval of how Nigel Farage handled that and some of his language around the Henry Novak murder and the handling of it by the police. But the Reform UK are now 9 points ahead nationally of Labour. We're not seeing any great gains for the Tories, even though Kemi Badenoch is now, head and shoulders above, most of the major party leaders in terms of approval ratings personally. But when it comes to the Makerfield by-election, the prediction seems to be from, again, the experts and people who've been on the ground, that this is going to be won by Andy Burnham, that the Burnham factor is going to trump the Reform Leave Brexit factor in Makerfield, and also, of course, combining that with Restore UK, taking Restore Britain, taking a slice of that right-wing vote. Do you think that we are looking at a Burnham victory in Makerfield, and how soon do you think that would mean a leadership attempt by Andy Burnham? Will it be, the next day, or do you think he'll bide his time?
Well, I mean, two things. Yes, I do think Andy Burnham's going to win in Makerfield. I thought that from the beginning. I said it from the beginning. I've been heavily criticised for saying it from the beginning.
You enjoy the criticism on social media. It's what you live for.
Well, it's just as well, isn't it? But no, I do think you're right. I think there is a Restore element there. I've been up there a couple of times. I still think Restore is going to potentially surprise a lot of people with the level of support it gets.
One poll suggested it's somewhere between 3% and 7%. You think it's higher than that?
I think it'd be high. I think it'd be higher than that. I'd be very surprised if it wasn't higher for that. In terms of the second part of your question, no, I don't think Andy Burnham wins on the Thursday and then challenges Keir Starmer on the Friday, and because Andy Burnham doesn't want that. Andy Burnham, my understanding is Andy Burnham, as I think most people in the Labour Party, want a sort of a measured, sensible, controlled handover from Keir Starmer to whoever
coronation
replaces him. Well, I think this is a difference. I mean, I think maybe Andy Burnham does want a coronation. I think a coronation would be a mistake. I think it would be good for the Labour Party, indeed important for the Labour Party, that the issues that are obviously going to bubble up once Keir Starmer departs about the direction the Labour Party takes. I think those debates and issues need to be debated properly and aired in a leadership.
And there's an argument, isn't it, that everything you need to test candidates. But I mean, Andy Burnham,
that's exactly right.
Keir Starmer was tested. How did that work out for everybody? Such a great candidate. But you tell them.
I think that's part. But I think that was part of the problem. I don't think Keir Starmer really tested because we all knew what the result of that general election was going to
Well, no,
be.
I mean when he won the Labour leadership, but when he comes
again with the Labour leadership,
Yeah.
I mean there wasn't. I mean who was it? Who did he face? Was it Rebecca Long Bailey? Was it him and
that was one of the candidates?
Yes, I think it was Rebecca Long Bailey.
But when it comes to Andy Burnham, when it comes to testing, he was asked by Newsnight, you say you'll stick with Rachel Reeves' fiscal rules. There have been some questions about whether he would do that or not. What are Rachel Reeves' fiscal rules? Now, if he wants to be Prime Minister, should be able to just say those very quickly. He ummed and answered when he said, I'm not going to answer questions like that like it's an exam. It was so obvious. It was like an education secretary being asked for, what's 7 times 8? I mean, and not being able to answer it.
Just on that though, because this has been a criticism of Andy Burnham throughout the campaign, that he's been evasive on issues. He hasn't been setting out his positions. He's been flip-flopping, etc. And again, I have been saying this throughout the campaign. The thing is, Andy Burnham is deliberately not running the by-election campaign as if it's the leadership campaign. So he's staying very, very focused on local issues, and he's not.
Except when he doesn't. Except he was talking about ending some taxes on hospitality firms. That's a national policy.
But that's I mean he's doing that and he's saying that's under the bag of my Mayor of Manchester sort of thing. But I'm just explaining what his strategy is. Now, up until this point, just staying entirely local. But you're absolutely right. That is not good enough scrutiny for someone who is then going to be Prime Minister of the country, which is why I say I think he needs to go through a process. Who knows what the end result would be? Wes Streeting would obviously run. I think other members of the cabinet in that case would run in such a contest. And at that point, you can actually flesh out these ideas. Because if it doesn't happen, then you're absolutely right. The very first criticism, the very first time Andy Burnham runs into trouble, as he will, if he's Prime Minister, is people will immediately say he was never tested. He was never tested. He just strolled into the job. He was never properly interrogated. His ideas were never interrogated. And this is the result. The one person, by the way, who will not run in that leadership contest, despite everything we've seen over the last 24, 48 hours, is Keir Starmer. When Andy Burnham, if and when Andy Burnham wins, Keir Starmer knows at that point it's over and will.
There's an interesting one. We'll put that in writing and see if that happens. Dan Hodges, always good to get your thoughts. Commentator at the Mail on Sunday. We're going to go straight to a quick break. Up next, going to talk to the former Israeli government spokesman Elon Levy about what's been happening in that conflict in the Middle East overnight. This is Talk.
We are going to remove all forms of DEI from policing. We will also, and we're the only, the Labour Party have not committed to this, the Tory Party have not committed to this. Reform are also taking the view that we would immediately ensure that nobody gets to carry deadly weapons on our streets unless you're law enforcement. So I don't care what religion you are. I don't care how ceremonial, in quotes, your dagger is.
So you would
not get to carry. There will be no religious exemption.
Okay. So you would stop the Kirpan being carried.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. 10:51 is the time. Let's talk right now about what's been going on in the Middle East with a set of retaliatory strikes by Israel and Iran. Let's talk to Elon Levy. He's a former Israeli government spokesman and host of Israel State of a Nation podcast and joins us once again. Good morning to you, Elon.
Hello, Julia.
Thank you.
We were all woken up by missile sirens at 6 in the morning, so I don't know how good a morning it is. But
no,
I hope it's calmer where
there
you
is
are.
that. Well, again, if you watch the BBC in this country, indeed listen to any of our government spokespeople, you'd think that Israel just woke up and just went, do you know what? I think we'll just fire some missiles at Iran and they should get their hands slapped. Can you talk us through how this has come about? Because an awful lot of people seem to be a bit confused about it.
Yeah, the Iranian regime has launched several salvos of missiles at Israel in order to protect its proxy army Hezbollah in Lebanon. Hezbollah is a Lebanese militia that takes its orders from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. It's been firing drones and missiles into Israel, hitting houses, killing Israeli soldiers. And Iran wants to keep Lebanon under its foot as an Iranian colony. So they stepped in and said, Israel, if you keep attacking Hezbollah and stopping it trying to fire missiles, we're going to attack Israel. And Israel went ahead. It attacked Hezbollah. It's not going to allow its people to be sitting ducks. And Iran is now retaliating with missile fire at Israeli cities. And it's absolutely critical that the Iranian regime not be allowed to treat Lebanon as its backyard. Iran does not get to dictate what happens in Lebanon. Israel wants Hezbollah out. Maybe more importantly, the Lebanese government wants Hezbollah out, and the Iranian regime is now stepping in to protect its proxy army. That linkage between the two arenas, that has to be disconnected.
And of course, Hezbollah, I mean, this has been a long-going battle, but Hezbollah did actually launch fresh assaults on Israel on October the 8th, 2023, straight after the Hamas attack from Gaza.
Yeah, October 7th was the opening shot of a regional war against Israel on multiple fronts by the Iranian regime and its proxy armies after Hamas invaded to massacre young people at a music festival, take children as hostages. Hezbollah joined the fighting. It started shooting missiles from Israel, from Lebanon at northern Israel. The original plan was to invade as well and capture territory and perpetrate a massacre just like Hamas. That's why Israel is determined to push Hezbollah away from the border, because every day Hezbollah is still in southern Lebanon is a risk of another invasion, another raid of an Israeli town, village, perpetration of barbaric atrocities. So Israel wants to push Hezbollah away and won't let Iran step in to try to save it.
And of course, this part of southern Lebanon, where Israel has been accused of, sort of seizing and invading, is actually supposed to be an independent buffer zone monitored by the UN, who have failed to do so, which is why you've got Iranian purchased, paid for Hezbollah rocket launchers in homes in southern Lebanon used against Israeli people. Again, it seems to me to be very, very clear when you ask what should Israel's response be, what would our response be if our neighbours did the same to us? And I'm pretty darn clear we wouldn't be saying, let's all calm things down and do nothing. What damage does this do, though, to relations between Israel and America, and particularly between Netanyahu and Donald Trump? Donald Trump has been a great friend of Israel ever since he was first elected. And he and Netanyahu seem to have worked very closely when it came to the 12-day war and indeed this Iran conflict. But there's clearly a difference in terms of Donald Trump's desperation, let's call it what it is, to get a deal in Iran, to get the Strait of Hormuz open, show his American people and the Republicans, I'm ending another war. Whereas Netanyahu and the Israelis, it's a very, very different prospect because you've still got that threat on your border. How big a sort of a wedge has been put between those two countries and two leaders?
I should certainly hope Britain wouldn't allow itself to become the Iranian regime's punching bag. And when I think we
probably would, to be fair, Elon.
Well,
no,
I
but
don't
to be
know.
fair,
I mean,
I don't think we've got any missiles to fire back, to be honest with you.
Well, you seem very confident when you say that they wouldn't immediately call for de-escalation, but I think every British citizen should know that maybe that's what the government would do when it's telling Israelis, okay, the Iranian regime is firing missiles at your cities, turn the other cheek. Yeah. It doesn't work that way, and I hope Britain wouldn't do that. Look, Israel and the United States have convergent interests here because we are allies, but two sovereign countries. The United States wants to wrap up the war with Iran, get out, get a deal they can sell to the public because this has been very unpopular domestically in America. Israel has a different interest. It doesn't want to get dragged into new rounds of fighting with Iran every 6 months because we can't afford it. Because every time Iran fires missiles at us, schools close, theaters close, flights are cancelled, foreign airlines cancel flights, and we can't keep being stuck in this loop. That's why Israel wants to end the military threat from the fanatical fundamentalist regime that has surrounded us with terrorist armies.
Can Israel do that,
to invade us.
Can you actually end that threat from Hezbollah? Because Hezbollah is a completely different prospect from Hamas. In terms of its scale, its tentacles. Iran and Hezbollah are not going to let Hezbollah disappear anytime soon. It's a massive terror network. It's a massive militia. It's also a major drug smuggling and people trafficking, child sex trafficking organisation. Billions of dollars are at stake in terms of what they're funding and in terms of what they can bring in from those nefarious things. Is there any prospect that Israel can just get rid of Hezbollah?
Not alone, but I'll tell you the difference between Hamas and Hezbollah. Lebanon hates Hezbollah. The Lebanese government wants Hezbollah to disarm. The United States wants Hezbollah to disarm. They have only Iran as their friends, and that's why they're continuing to attack with Iranian support. Israel and Lebanon are holding peace talks. They want to have peace. They've said, we're not at war. Our problem is this Iranian proxy army that must disarm because it's causing misery for both of us. So the hope is Israel's defensive campaign against Hezbollah, one, softens up the target so that the Lebanese can mop it up, and two, creates the urgency for a Lebanese government that has chickened out of confronting Hezbollah, that does not want to fight this militia, to understand they have to confront this Lebanese militia using its territory for attacks against Israel, or it will end badly for Lebanon. So the hope is this is something we can do together with Lebanon, not alone, but that means Lebanon really needs to wake up and understand they can't chicken out of another confrontation with Hezbollah. This is on them. Now is the time.
Elon Levy, former Israeli government spokesman, host, as I say, of the brilliant Israel State of a Nation podcast. Thank you, as always, for joining us. Just a really quick response there from Claire Pearsall.
I think that's really interesting, his point about Lebanon having to literally man up and deal with this.
Except they've got this, huge militia inside their country.
They do, but they need
bigger than their own army.
That they can have to deal with it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it is just extraordinary, isn't it? I really do have an issue with the likes of Yvette Cooper, our Foreign Secretary, giving her tuppence worth. I'm sorry, the rules are different in the Middle East. They have to respond. There's nothing to discuss there. So much more we want to talk about. I want to hear your thoughts on Henry Novak, on social media, you name it. Give us a call. I'll get your calls on air. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. It's fast approaching 3 minutes past 11. This is Talk, the home of common sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio, your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your Canadian device, thank you for joining us. Lots to talk about. We're going to talk more a bit about Israel and Iran, as we just did with Elon Levy. We're going to be talking about David Lammy saying that, he agreed to disagree with J.D. Vance, the US Vice President, with whom, for some reason, he's good friends. Don't know why either, but saying he was wrong in his comments he made about the murder of teenager Henry Novak, blaming it on mass migration. But I wonder actually if there was a kernel of truth in what J.D. Vance said. Love to hear your thoughts on that. Also, we're going to talk about, related to Henry Novak, a police race watchdog has warned that efforts to tackle institutional racism remain too slow and inconsistent across police forces. Really? How much more can you guys do? Other than actually just decide that everyone who's white in this country is a problem. It's just the most extraordinary thing. Also going to be talking more about social media as well. Claire Pearce, I'm delighted to say, is joining me in the studio today. Morning. Once again to you. I'd love you to get in touch about whatever you want to get in touch with. You know the rules. But in particular, Lammy telling J.D. Vance that it was wrong to blame Henry Novak's death on the mass invasion, his words, of migrants. What's your reaction to that? Love to hear your thoughts on social media as well. We'll talk to you a little bit more about that and what's going on, of course, in the Middle East as well. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Text us on 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls to charge the national rate and text cost £1. Standard network rate message. I'll promise to get to more calls in this half hour. Only managed one in the last hour. Claire, we've just been talking about Iran and Israel, and I feel if you've just tuned in, you just missed it. Go on YouTube. You can find it. Let's talk about where we are in terms of David Lammy and J.D. Vance. We've got a whole host of sort of American commentators talking about what's going on in this country, and we've got J.D. Vance and David Lammy having a private phone call. They became mates when he was Foreign Secretary, and for some reason J.D. Vance didn't use him being moved as Deputy Prime Minister as an excuse to just drop him like a hot Brit. We've also, he said basically agreed to disagree. We've had Keir Starmer accusing those, and so in Americans, including Elon Musk, for trying to cause division in our society and not to get involved. But again and again and again, we and our British politicians have commented constantly on American politics, not just on George Floyd, on Donald Trump. And even over the George Floyd murder in 2020, using words like anger, righteous anger, fury, words like that, which when apparently Nigel Farage uses it is terrible, or Elon Musk uses it, it's terrible, but it's absolutely OK if people on the left use it. This is the basic problem with Labour and the left generally. Greens, Lib Dems, all the same. It's always one rule for them and one rule for everyone else, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. And you can't have a conversation about migration without being called racist or terrible, according to Labour, or divisive or bigoted, as I've been called previously. And do you know what? I know. Obs. Here we go. You seem like you're nice. Well, I like to think so, but clearly people don't always agree with that. And I think the left seem to... That does include our husband. He's a lefty. He's a lefty. He's a very sensible lefty, though, let's all be honest. He is, actually. But I think that's the left's problem. They don't like the criticism going anywhere unless it's them doing the criticising. Yeah. So no one else is allowed to have an opinion. Your allies are not allowed to have an opinion. And that's not how you run a country. No, indeed. And they should be able to show themselves up. But I think it's very interesting what Vance said. Again, I don't think he's right in the sense that, Henry Novak's death is blamed on the mass invasion of migrants. The man who killed him, Vikram Digwa, was British. Yeah. You can hear it in the accent, it's clearly British. OK, but will come from a family of immigrants, because I'm sorry, I don't sign up to this weird nonsense that, no, everyone, you're English if you were born here, or if you live, you're English. No, clearly... I mean, if I went and lived in India, or I went and lived in Africa, or went and lived in South America, I wouldn't suddenly take on. I wouldn't have that ethnicity. I wouldn't have. I mean, can we stop that nonsense? I could live in Nigeria my entire life. I would still be Englishly ethnic and national, unless I changed my nationality. But no other country has an issue with this, apart from us, because we just think somehow being English or being British is somehow embarrassment, which is why people are embarrassed by our flag. Not most of us. Most of us are not. Most of us are very proud of our flag and what it stands for. But the left, they'd rather have the EU flag or the trans rainbow flag. By the way, I went to my old... don't do this ever. I went to my old Oxford College yesterday. Proudly flying above the tower is the most divisive flag ever. Okay, other than the Palestinian flag, is the Pride, not the rainbow flag for Pride Month, not the celebrate being able to be open and free about your sexuality, and it's not an issue anymore. You're not going to be arrested anymore. Although, frankly, with all due respect to my lovely, lovely gay friends, can we all move on now? Your sexuality is no interest to me any more than my sexuality is of interest to you. You've got equal rights. You get married. You can adopt. Can we all just
move on?
Not interesting. No, but just not a thing anymore. But the Pride flag, that has that's got the Black Lives Matters V in it. It's got, it's the queer thing. What is queer? There's no plus, isn't it? It's got the trans in it. We set a flag celebrating people thinking something that's completely not the case. That is a weird flag to celebrate. And by the way, a flag which actually, that is the flag that hates lesbians and tells them they should have sex with men who say they're women. Sorry, I've got very little time for this, but it's flying over my old Oxford College.
You see, I'm surprised it's still flying. I'm sure that you would have known a secret way up to that flagpole.
Do you know what? Don't think this wasn't a thought. Don't think this wasn't a thought. If I was a student there, it wouldn't be bloody flying. I'll tell you that right now. It really wouldn't. But there we are. I would just be flying Union flags everywhere, all around it, at the very least. Yeah. But anyway... Shame you never have a match on you when you need it, but there we are. But, OK, so I digress, obviously. But there is an element where this sort of, this guy, Vikram Digwer, is a killer. And I don't even think it's relevant that he's Sikh. OK, he had that weapon on him. He would have been carrying... If he hadn't been a Sikh, he'd have been carrying another weapon on him. He was a wrong 'un. He is a wrong 'un. That's why he's behind bars for the murder. But when J.V. Vance said... Henry Novak, and we all remember that video. We spent all of last week talking about that horrific video, which, by the way, the parents agreed to be put out, knowing what the reaction would be. These are not stupid people. These are very highly intelligent. You listened to his announcement, his speech outside the sentencing at the court of his son's killer. They knew what the reaction would be. I'm sorry, they knew how people would see that and what judgments people would make of the police. But J.D. Vance said of Henry Novak, he died the same way a civilization dies, abandoned, handcuffed by authorities who neither trusted nor cared for him, and accused of hate crimes he did not commit. But that is true. Our civilization in the West, and particularly in Britain, is dying. We've got the authorities who think that British values, British history, British traditions, the English language even, our norms, our laws, our expectations of behaviour, our freedom of speech, all that they don't have any value, and that diversity is our strength, and that we should be not just multiracial but multicultural, and all cultures are equal. Now, if you think all cultures are equal, your culture dies. Because the people who will feel most strongly about imposing their culture on other people are the ones who will win. And that is what we are seeing with, Islamic blasphemy laws de facto happening, and even without the Free Speech Union stepping in, happening in law as well. I think he's completely right. I think he's absolutely nailed it. And actually, what happened with Henry Novak and that institutional anti-racism policy that they've got, where someone said racist comment, that's the number one thing. We'll believe the guy who's brown skin, not the guy who's white skin, because he's just a drunk, white, working class racist lad. Of course he's the one in the wrong. We can't believe a word he says. That is a symptom of what has been happening nationally and culturally.
Yes, it is, and I don't disagree with the conversation. What I do disagree with is J.D. Vance linking the two things together, because I don't think it's as simple as that. Because he was saying that Henry Novak's death was contributed to, the mass migration epidemic sweep in the UK.
But isn't the mass? I don't like the word invasion.
No.
An invasion by the illegal migrants, not the legal migrants. We're giving them visas. But isn't the actual arrival of millions of people from different cultures around the world and not being required to integrate and assimilate and adopt British values, cultures, norms and customs and even language, the language key there. Is it not the case that actually that is what led to the authorities bending over backwards? Oh, we have to change how we do things because of the people who've arrived.
But I don't even think it's as simple as that, because if you look at where the police forces were in the Stephen Lawrence case, for example, where a lot of this will stem from, they then have swung too far the other side. So there has been an awful lot of governments.
Why did they do that?
An awful lot of governments thinking that they needed to fix something that wasn't necessarily broken, didn't need
there was racism in police that needed...
Yeah,
Stephen Lawrence's murder was not properly investigated because he was black. End of.
But you didn't need to make the swinging changes that governments did and keep doing, and they keep fiddling around the edges rather than just setting out.
Can everyone not be racist?
Exactly.
Sack the people who were racist. It's not complicated.
Basic stuff, and get rid of those bad officers. And there are some incredibly bad officers out there, but the majority are absolutely fine. So I do think that we're looking at this through the lens of the last 5 years, when actually it stems back a lot further with racism in the police.
Love to hear your thoughts on this. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Let's also talk about where we are on social media, because goodness me, the Prime Minister is keen to talk about this today. I think he thinks, to be honest with you, that this is going to be his, well, not his legacy. He's not thinking about a legacy. The Prime Minister thinks he's going to hang on. There's one thing we keep hearing about the Prime Minister and his little allies and his supporters, and even the ones who pretend to support him when they're on a media interview but don't really, is they always say, he's got resilience like I've never known. Yeah, he has to be resilient, but because everyone hates him and thinks he's useless. But having a thick skin and no self-knowledge is not being resilient.
No, it really isn't.
Having the hide of our rhinoceros is not being resilient. So today he's attending a London Tech Week, and he was speaking there this morning at 9 o'clock. Lots of front pages, lots of stories today, particularly on the Times, saying that he wants to see there's going to be some sort of ban on social media for kids under the age of 16, something similar to what Australia's had. That's an all-over ban. Of course, that hasn't worked in Australia. He's had a consultation. He's literally said he wants to wait and see what see the evidence from Australia. The evidence from Australia is it doesn't work. Yeah, because all these kids are still on social media. But one of the reasons for that, of course, is not just them going on dark web and accessing it elsewhere. By the way, all of our kids can do that, by the way, even if we don't know how, they can. The 4-year-olds can do it, probably. It's that their accounts continued. So they weren't taken out of their accounts and then had to log back in. That would be a very simple change that people could make. Again, the fact that governments look into this and this is how thick, useless governments are, not just ours, the Australian one as well, which is frankly just as bad as ours. But we're told he wants to make an announcement. It could be this week, it could be sooner. Who knows? I mean, he's desperate to do something before the Makerfield by-election. He wants to sort of appear to be doing something. And it'd be a popular move. 75% of parents say they would support this. Well, again, great, but do they know how it will work? But what he did announce this morning about 9:30 is this government will not stand by while children are put at risk online. Literally done that, mate. Today I'm calling on the tech companies to introduce device-level controls to prevent children from taking, sharing or viewing nude images, and if they don't act, we will. This is something that Jess Phillips, the Home Office Minister who resigned when Res Streeting resigned, and basically this was over our personal ambitions. Let's stop pretending it was over anything other than Jess Phillips. But she shows that she had, in her letter to him when she resigned, she basically contacted him really early on in his premiership to say we can insist that tech companies install this little thing. There's just a device. And it makes it, using AI, it makes it impossible for someone who is under the age of 18 to take a nude photo or a sexualised photo of themselves. The AI can detect it. They literally can't take it. So it's not just they can't send it to anyone, they can't take it. And a huge number of the images online, sexualised images, nude images of children, are taken by children themselves, often coerced into it or somehow tricked into it, blackmailed into it sometimes after an initial photo. And she said he failed to act, and now she's saying he's now saying he's calling on the tech companies to do it, or he will act. He could have done this on day one.
He could have done, but he's chosen not to because he's so stuck with what it actually is that he wants to achieve, rather than just putting those measures in place already. There is the technology out there, as you say, to be able for the companies to be able to do that, to stop those photographs being taken in the first place. It just needs to be dealt with. But it is all this, we're going to see how it goes, and if you haven't behaved yourselves, we're going to do something. And you just think, well, what is it you're going to do? Why can't you do that now?
But the tech I think a lot of this should come down
to
to tech companies. And again, they'd say, he stood up to tech companies on Grok, basically. And they did it to me, putting women into a bikini. You can put men, you can put Keir Starmer into a bikini, but putting children either nude or in sexual positions. Really just horrible stuff that, again, their AI could easily stop this from happening, but you give it some parameters. They choose not to. But we're constantly told, should we just ban children from social media, ban the tech companies from accessing our children? Couldn't we have advice and guidance for parents? Because we can't actually police what happens in homes, but this is, you're not supposed to do this. So parents can say, no, I'm not allowed to do this. You can't have this device or whatever. But also just have the tech companies be quiet. If you want to have access to our kids, in the same way we have rules about advertising alcohol and advertising cigarettes, you basically can't advertise cigarettes anywhere. Alcohol, very, very limited. Even though you can drink alcohol, you can drink alcohol legally pretty much any age, actually. From about 12, your parents can give it to you. But from 18, you can buy alcohol. But in an advert for alcohol, everyone has to appear over 25. There are very, very strict rules about it. Why not instigate some rules around, if someone is registered as a kid? Now, you're not going to get all the kids, and parents are going to let their kids get round it. But I was drinking in a nightclub at 14. It doesn't mean that the law was wrong. I still support the law.
You got away with it.
Just you got away with it. Some of us could get away with it. But the urge that everyone has for ban, that's the bit that worries me.
And that's what concerns me, and that's what I mean about that Keir Starmer doesn't know what it is he wants to achieve. Does he want an outright ban on everything? Because that's going to be one set of circumstances. Does he want parents to take more responsibility? Does he want more guidance? Does he want the tech companies to stand up and actually be responsible? None of that I know where he stands. He seems to sort of flit between what is popular at that particular moment. So at the moment he might ban. So he's seeing how well that plays out. And at the moment it looks very popular and he's edging towards that. But then it's all the unintended consequences that come with it that he hasn't even thought about.
And they never have. No. This is the thing. No one in government ever thinks about any of this. No. The idea you have this massive consultation, they had tens of thousands of responses, and like a week later you go, oh, right, now we might do something. Yeah, because you've done all that reading, have you? Give me a break. It's the incompetence, but also you're going to wait and see how Australia does. Yeah, it's worth looking at. Wasn't that the plan in terms of the ban on Rishi Sunak's, generational smoking ban? We're going to wait and see what happens in New Zealand. New Zealand didn't carry it through because guess what? Everyone is buying cigarettes off the back of a lorry rather than actually buying them legally. You ain't getting the tax from them.
Could have told them that.
Well, people did tell them that. But one of the things I find particularly difficult is the number of people who just, their response to everything is ban something. Oh, yes. I don't like that, ban it. No, I don't like it. But there are other ways you can do, and again, you mentioned earlier, you did an example earlier, you're not supposed to eat, you're supposed to have a biscuit or two biscuits, you're not supposed to have a whole packet of biscuits. But some people eat a whole packet of biscuits and they get fat, or they get ill, or they're kids and they full of sugar and they're lunatics for the next 4 hours. But we don't ban biscuits.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
No, exactly. And I think that's always the problem when governments want to start banning things and becoming all authoritarian as if they know best. Now, bear in mind also that this is Keir Starmer who, when he asked the bereaved parents what their response was, that they wanted the age raised to 18. Now that will cause Keir Starmer problems because he wants to reduce the age of voting to 16.
Although they don't really want to do it anymore because a lot of those 16-year-olds are going to vote either Green or Reform.
Yes.
So they don't want to do it. But again, this is the I've got a major issue. Like, I am very, very sorry to anyone who's lost their child. My heart goes out to you. I would be in a mental institution overnight because I would never be able to cope with it. I mean, I don't know how parents could possibly cope with losing a child, particularly into violence or to something like that, social media, to think they could have helped, had a chance to save them. I don't think that bereaved parents make very, very good policy makers. I think you should listen to them and be sympathetic, and if there's information that you wouldn't otherwise have, you should have that input. But I don't think they make good policy makers, and it's very interesting how many children's charities don't think that a social media ban is the answer.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think if you make those kind of legislation decisions with somebody who is emotionally charged, and I don't, that's not
it's why we have juries and judges making decisions in court, not the victim or the victim's family.
Yeah. I mean, I would be the worst person in the world because, I would want to suffer, everyone else to suffer equally if it were me.
100%. 100%.
So that's not the way forward, is it?
Can we talk about something a little bit lighter?
Yes,
Can we talk about the World Cup, which is starting later this week? Although, I've got to be honest with you, I love a World Cup. I love a Euros. I love a World Cup. But, oh, my goodness me. It's going to be a long one because, I mean, basically, it's not a World Cup. Technically, these are World Cup finals. It's not a World Cup final. It's literally anyone in the world who wants to. If you could kick a ball, you're basically in the World Cup. There are so many matches, and because it's taking place in one of the most unhelpful time zone for us, an awful lot of matches. Certainly Scotland's matches, like sort of 2 in the morning.
I know, it's really bad,
UK time. We're doing all right. I think we've got our first 2 matches at 9 p.m. and 10, and then 2 at 9 and 1 at 10 p.m. But, I mean, it's not ideal, and obviously a lot of pubs are getting to stay open later licences so they can enjoy them. Not sure that's going to work for the Scots, with 2 a.m. kickoffs. A lot of matches, I think people are going, right, I'm going to watch it at 9 in the morning. Now, ACAS, who try and work through employment disputes, they have urged employers to be flexible over staff hours during World Cup, basically saying, look, if people say, could I make up the hours at a different time? I was on that night shift, but could I come in a bit later because I was up overnight watching? I like the idea of this. And I do think that employers are wise to get a little bit of a feel-good factor around these sort of tournaments because you can promote a lot of team building and all of that. But I also think that, if you care that much about it, guys, or guys or girls, take your holiday leave around these dates. There are going to be a load of people calling in sick after these matches. There's going to be an awful lot of people who are just going to be like working from home on days. Our productivity is going to go down the toilet because of this. You got a job. Sometimes when you've got a job, you don't get to do other things you want to do because you've got a job which pays for everything else. I really don't think that people should expect their jobs to bend around what is, and I love my footy tournaments, a hobby.
Yes, it's something that you want to watch or participate in. Then you have annual leave for that reason. So just use it.
If you want to take all your holiday leave during the World Cup, fine.
Absolutely.
Wife might not be happy about it, just saying.
Exactly. It means that you can't do something else another time. But, I mean, I'm sorry, but them's the breaks, aren't they? This is what happens.
But I don't think how much more are we going to expect employers to bend around?
Well, exactly. And what's going to happen? And we'll get some kind of tribunal case against somebody that's not allowed to start a few hours late.
If we get in the final, unlikely. If we're in the final, then no, sorry.
All bets are off.
Sorry, no, Pen, sorry. It's all about us. But no, but you can't. There are so many matches. And is it just your England match or just Scotland matches? Is it, I just think there comes a point when you've got a job, you're paid to go to work. If you don't want, take your holiday leave. It's not sick leave. It's not sick leave because you stayed up late overnight after a football match. I'm sorry. I just think these are like the same people who go like, oh, schools, is it okay if kids don't come to school because mum and dad want to get a cheaper flight to Lanzarote? No, I'm sorry. I don't think the world should bend around you. I really, really don't.
You signed up to the job knowing what the rules were.
I know. Simple. Tell me if you disagree. Tell me, you might. I'm sure the talkSPORT boys down there, the girls, they'll disagree. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. Your calls on any of the topics we're talking about. Get in touch. We'll get to your calls up next. This is Talk.
We are going to remove all forms of DEI from policing. We will also, and we're the only, the Labour Party have not committed to this, the Tory Party have not committed to this. Reform are also taking the view that we would immediately ensure that nobody gets to carry deadly weapons on our streets unless you're law enforcement. So I don't care what religion you are. I don't care how ceremonial, in quotes, your dagger is.
So you would
not get to carry. There will be no religious exemption.
Okay. So you would stop the Kirpan being carried.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:28 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. Richard is on the phone in London. Richard, you want to talk about JD Vance and all the other Americans commenting on the horrific case of Henry Novak. What do you want to say?
Well, to answer the question in a slightly odd way, yeah. I think the Americans are thinking that they're very anxious about who their real partners are in Europe. And if I can just give you a couple of figures, Julia. Poland has got a population of 37 million, but it's got a military of 216,000 strong. And they're actually planning to increase their spending to 4.7 of their GDP. So a country, broadly speaking, has got half of our population, has got 3 times the size of our military. Yep. So it's clearly a very different society. Now, Vance, to some degree, yes, in terms of the detail, you can challenge what he's said, but his main point really is that mass migration has changed the face of the UK.
And it has.
And that we're not really willing to deal with it. David Lammy said, and this is where it gets difficult, because obviously you have to be careful what we say, but of course David Lammy said the person, the murder, if you like, was a Brit. But we also know, Julia, that we've had long-term problems with integration. We've only got to look back to the Brixton and Tottenham riots. Pretty horrifying. That's 40 years ago.
Although there are lots of people making the point, and people keep going on about Vikram Digwa being a Sikh. I don't even think, other than the fact the weapon he used, but he could have used any other weapon. Yeah. I don't think it's even relevant that he was Sikh. It was the fact that he was brown-skinned, and therefore he could claim, and his brother could claim, that he was a victim of a racist attack. But he doesn't represent a particular community. But in fact, if you're thinking about one of the communities that is most integrated, Sikhs are one of the communities that's most integrated. Churchill has now been cancelled, as we know from the banknotes.
Yeah. I think the broader context is that the Americans would probably say, well, if you look at what Churchill said about immigration back in the 50s, he didn't believe that we should be. He basically fairly clearly he didn't think Britain should go. He didn't think Britain should actually have mass immigration.
Well, no, can I just point out, no one did. No one did. We didn't have it until Tony Blair.
No, and we weren't really consulted about it. I think the Americans are basically saying, look, if you compare Britain to Poland, Britain's been changed dramatically and out of shape.
Yep.
And they're worried about us because obviously, Julia, we're now a divided country and we can't defend ourselves.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of those points were really, really interesting. And again, I lived in America as a kid, and I tell you what, you stand up and you salute the flag and you sing the national anthem every morning, even in primary school in the Midwest, where I was in the 1970s. And this idea that, you come and you assimilate and you speak the language, and they themselves also let that go. And in terms of, in lots of parts of Southern America now, Spanish is effectively either the main or an equal language, and they should never have allowed that. No English, no playing, and we should absolutely have that rule as well. Richard, really interesting call. Thank you so much. Let's go to James, who is in Staffordshire. James, you want to talk about race action plans, don't you?
Good morning, Julia.
Good morning.
All right, I've come up with a bit of a theory. Excuse me.
Hello. I felt that.
Yeah, so they desperately want to prove that multicultural works. Mm-hmm. Culturalism works because then they can continue importing a very cheap labour force. So they need to skew the figures. And the figures are that as you said, most cultures aren't equal. So, and this is no disrespect to people, but you've got something like 7 or 8% of the people in this country are black, account for 44% of the prison population.
No, 4%. No, 4%. I don't think it is 44%. No, I don't think that is right. Let's not throw around figures unless we're 100% sure we're right. They're right. And
Well, the has now said that those figures are deplorable, so they're going to alter the way that they view crime, the crime statistics. On the flip side of that particular coin, and then there's 75% single-parent families, and that is a true figure.
No, but again, don't know where you're getting your figures from, but I think you're getting them from social media rather than official stats. Even just put grok in. I think again, among Afro-Caribbeans, and again, very different from people who've come here from West Africa, I think we're looking at something like a 45-50% rate of single-parent families. But again, that has a massive impact in terms of children's life chances, and different minority ethnic groups who have a very strong rate of family, solidity, don't have similar problems partly because of that. But yeah, we have got a ridiculous situation when people go, oh, I mean, we've had David Lammy over the weekend talk about, more black, particularly young black men. They're represented. They're getting arrested. They're dying in custody, or they're in custody. We've got stats in terms of Nottingham, Killavalda, Calicane, more young black men in mental health institutions. Why? Because they are more likely to suffer from some of the mental health issues that would need them to be taken away for various different reasons, more likely to commit certain crimes because of the demographics, the social background, all of this. And whenever there is a discrepancy between black and white stats on anything, the answer must always be, it must be racism that's causing it, as opposed to nearly always it's demographics, where people live, their social and economic background, family breakdown. It's nearly always explained by that.
Yeah, cannabis as well tends to
cannabis, huge issue.
Community.
Yeah. What did you make of, by the way, we spoke to Rick Pryor the other day, the former chairman of the Metropolitan Police Federation, who basically, tried to sack him because he spoke out about people being so anxious, police officers being so anxious about, everything's about diversity and being right on as opposed to getting the job done. And he's talked about Scotland Yard being captured by a woke mind virus, and certainly some of the documents we've seen on this anti-racism drive, treating people not based on the, on equality, but on the colour of their skin. We've also got Abimbola Johnson. She chairs a scrutiny board overseeing police race action plans. And she said her watchdog had consistently found that progress in tackling racism had been, in her words, too slow, too inconsistent and too poorly embedded, and said that the police force's efforts to combat what she called institutional racism have not gone far enough. What do you make of what she says?
Well, I think you may or may not remember, but I worked for police for 20 years as a civilian. You get into big conversations with officers. And the biggest, scariest thing for losing your pension is to be accused of racism. Yeah. Policemen are now highly reluctant. If they see me breaking a window and if they see a person of colour breaking a window, they're going to tap me on the shoulder. They may walk past because of the accusations of racism.
Which is madness.
The stop and search. So you've got statistics proving, I won't bother going into statistics again, but you've got statistics proving that you've got people of colour killing more people of colour.
Yep. And the other.
The amount of poor mothers who have lost their children is off the chart.
Yeah,
it's 3 stabbings in London a day.
The mums are very much in favour of stop and search to keep their sons alive. Really good to talk to you, James. Thank you so much. 11:36 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to Errol Morcuch from Republicans Overseas UK to find out what the American administration really think of what's going on here, and is Trump really going to buy the Chagos Islands? This is Talk, the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:37 is the time. Let's go straight to my next guest, Errol Morcott. She's a spokesman for Republicans Overseas UK. Good morning to you, Errol.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Can we talk, first of all, just about these usual war of words we keep getting between the Americans and the Brits when anything happens crime-wise or migration-wise, two rather separate stories, either side of the Atlantic, and everyone puts their tuppence worth in. We had our Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy, in conversation with JD Vance over the weekend, saying they had to agree to disagree over the issue of what was responsible for the death of this poor young man, Henry Novak. He was stabbed to death, but handcuffed by police who didn't believe that he was the victim and thought he was a racist perpetrator. But we had JD Vance saying that he believed this was results of, mass immigration and the death of a civilization. We've had criticism from Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, of Americans, stoking up division in our country. What do you make of that tit for tat?
I have to say I'm a little bit surprised, only because Labour especially was so involved in the U.S. election, whether that was putting their support by campaigning for Kamala Harris or in various other things regarding U.S. policies during the death of George Floyd or other things. There's been a lot of cross-border communication. Yeah. Now, my perspective is friends should tell each other the truth. There's an old Russian proverb that an enemy will agree with you, but a friend will argue. And I think that's a very valid thing to bring up here, because if we didn't have respect for each other, if we weren't watching each other, it would mean we didn't care about each other. So we see, the problems we have on our side of the aisle, we take that criticism. But when we see somebody who's obviously the reason he was left to bleed out was the optics of not wanting to be racist, yep, or some of these other, very interesting things where one group is able to carry certain things, other groups aren't carrying certain things. The knife crime in the UK mirrors the gun crime in the U.S. in a per capita way. And obviously, it's a serious issue. So I'm surprised that there's so much pushback, as though this is the first time this has happened. It's a natural exchange between friends, and I think everybody should be happy it's going on.
Yeah, and it is an extraordinary for Keir Starmer. I mean, he actually was leader of the opposition in 2020 when George Floyd was murdered by an American police officer. He was writing letters to Boris Johnson. He was speaking about it constantly. So many of his front bench speakers were commenting on it, insisting on having an embargo on sales to the American police that could be used in tackling even the Black Lives Matter riots. I mean, he was all over this, but apparently that's fine.
Yeah, that's the problem. It seems like there's a one-way street of policing, two tiers of policing, two tiers of perspectives. And if there's any pushback against that narrative, where we say, hey, look, this mirrors that, then the accusations come out, and it all, again, it hinges around this compulsive obsession with race-based policing, race-based ideology, and trying to equalize outcomes without looking at data. And the real data shows there's serious problems. And I see no reason why the vice president should be sorry for his comments. We do see civilizational decline in the UK specifically. That's how our government sees it, and
why specifically do they see it in Britain particularly?
Well, it's a microcosm of American culture in some way, only because we can understand your language, maybe as pathetic as that sounds. We can't understand maybe to the detail of what's going on.
You just don't pay attention to the other countries. I think we are the country that most takes on the latest American madness, to be honest with you.
Yeah, listen, it's our fault, hand to God, we exported DEI to you people, so I'm very sorry for that. That came out of our entire, terrible system we have in our country. So I think the interest there is because we have this special relationship. We fought two great wars together. We have a president, maybe the last president of that generation, who believes in that special relationship, who's an Anglophile. And so that, special spotlight, well, you might not like it. Man, boy, will you miss it if that goes away and it turns somewhere else. Perhaps like that other gentleman said, as Poland rises up and as the U.S. looks for its friends around the world, well, friends have to be able to operate. And when the UK can't even send anybody to defend its own areas in the Mediterranean.
Air base, Cyprus,
or in the Chagos.
No, absolutely. I want to come on to the Chagos, but do you think it's actually, civilizational, basically, suicide effectively?
I personally do, but it doesn't have to be. Immigration is oftentimes a beautiful thing. And I'm an immigrant to the United States of America. One of the biggest problems we have in immigration is you create a democracy that ends up becoming an ethnic head count. when you don't have proper integration. So then these people vote for these people vote for these people, and people aren't making a real democratic republic. And that becomes a huge issue. In the UK, I think you guys are having that same problem because unchecked migration, where it's led by narratives of Marxist sort of agitators and racialists, that drives division. And then you have a civilization that's beholden to people who are not from that civilization, and we see that as decline, and in America as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, I couldn't agree with you more on that front. And again, the Democrats have completely, I mean, absolutely, most of them utterly bonkers on this issue. And we've had that completely dominating our debate. And it's interesting, actually, when you think about something that actually does unite people in this country, is getting a proper inquiry, a public inquiry into the grooming gang scandal. That, I swear, only has happened because of Elon Musk getting involved and tweeting about that. There's no new facts that have come out about that whatsoever. I've been covering that story since 2011, 2012. No new facts on that story, other than him actually promoting that. You mentioned the Chagos Islands. There is this talk that Donald Trump has been talking to some of his staff about possibly buying the Chagos Islands and the Diego Garcia base to safeguard that, rather than Britain basically giving it. This is the bit I can't understand. Giving it to Mauritius and then paying to lease back the Diego Garcia base. We're very much in favour of this because it will save us a fortune if we can get out of that stupid deal, and would mean that it would safeguard those islands and that particular military base. How likely is it, though?
I think maybe of all of Trump's attempted land conquests, this one seems like it has the right parameters to work. I mean, at first value, you know, you guys are giving it away, so it's not as though we're coming and taking it from you or anything. You guys don't want this amazing strategic resource.
Well, we do. It's just the Prime Minister and his Attorney General. The rest of us are sane.
Yeah, exactly. And so perhaps sane people would rather take, I don't know, $1 trillion in cash than pay $1 trillion in cash. And also that money going, I mean, that it's going to go to China in some direction. So we might as well just pay Mauritius, which is the Chinese proxy, and take it for ourselves. And then, by the way, we'll be using that to defend the Western alliance. I mean, it's a very incredible part of how we defend the global and international airspace is having those areas. That's why Iran tried to strike it. So I think a deal could come around, but maybe not with this government. And maybe that's why this pushback is here, because we're hoping for a new government.
Yes, well, that's very, very interesting. And you mentioned Iran again. Overnight, of course, we've had this tit-for-tat exchanges between Iran and Israel, despite the president, your US president, basically telling reporters, we hold all the cards effectively. We are, Israel should not be retaliating. No one was killed. The Iron Dome worked, and there shouldn't be retaliation. And Netanyahu has retaliated. How much damage does what Netanyahu does with the strikes on Iran and indeed continuing the strikes on Hezbollah in Lebanon, how much damage is that doing to the US-Israel relationship and indeed the relationship between the two men?
In the short term, it's put a lot of pressure on it, obviously, because we have two different objectives. And this is a little bit of a decoupling that was probably going to happen as you move forward in this. Bibi Netanyahu, he has to play domestically at home to his politicians. And Donald Trump is a TV master, a master of manipulation. So you can't, at face value, take it that he's sitting there saying this without back channeling to Bibi. A lot of this also washes Americans' hands from a lot of the actions that Israel does. The more that Israel does these actions and seems to be in defiance of the Americans, whether or not that's true, it allows the Americans to say, look, they're acting outside of the lines, and it's Trump who's trying to get that deal. Israel's on a fine line right now as a subordinate power. They're having maybe a difficult, emotional experience to take these directions, and they have to show.
Well, not a different emotional experience. They are being directly fired upon by both Hezbollah and Iran.
Right, and with that context, there's very little you can say to them to tell them to not retaliate. However, you have a chain reaction, a domino. They say, "Don't strike Lebanon," or we'll strike Israel. Israel strikes Tehran. So you create a never-ending death loop. So unless somebody does take Trump's advice, we're going to escalate this to a point where maybe Trump tries a new tactic, or he lets Israel go at it alone, as Bibi sort of hinted he wanted to do. But obviously, behind the closed doors, it seems like the alliance is very strong. The U.S. was involved in those strikes as far as intelligence services go, and a lot of big targets and drone factories, as well as one of their top generals, were killed. So great commendation to the IDF. They did what they needed to do to defend their country. And I think a little bit of the theater we see on television or on TV, on X, is obfuscation by the White House and the Knesset to overthrow perhaps the public propaganda on this.
OK, really good to talk to you. Covered a lot of ground there. Errol Mokuch, Democrats and Republicans see overseas UK. Claire Pearsall, listening to all that, let you come back in on whatever it is you want to come back in on, really.
I think just the Chagos Islands, I think, is probably the most interesting of the news this morning, that President Trump just thinks, do you know what, stuff everybody else, I'm just going to go and buy them.
I mean...
And it does benefit us. So,
but you were saying earlier, you think that the deal that's been done is so bad that we can't actually get out of it.
Yeah, and that's the problem. He'd have to buy it off Mauritius and we'd still have to pay out the money that we allegedly negotiated.
Seriously, I would not trust anyone in this government to negotiate buying a Mars bar.
Can you imagine?
Seriously, they're so bad. Oh, 11:48 stamp. Love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. Interesting also what Erin Wilcoach was saying about, our civilisational decline. Yeah, I think they're right. That's the thing. I think they're right. Love to hear what you have to say. 0344 499 1000. Up next, going to be talking to the brilliant, the wonderful former police officer Harry Miller about all these battles over policing. And have we really just not gone far enough to tackle institutional racism within the police? Or have we gone too far? This is Talk.
We are going to remove all forms of DEI from policing. We will also, and we're the only, the Labour Party have not committed to this, the Tory Party have not committed to this. Reform are also taking the view that we would immediately ensure that nobody gets to carry deadly weapons on our streets unless you're law enforcement. So I don't care what religion you are. I don't care how ceremonial, in quotes, your dagger is.
So you would stop the
there will be no religious exemption.
Okay. So you would stop the Kirpan being carried.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:50 is the time. Let's talk to Harry Miller now. He's a former police officer and founder of Fair Cop, and talk to him about, well, what we've all been talking about for the whole of the last week. In fact, it started on Monday night, last night, after we all saw that horrific body cam footage from the police of how they handled arriving on the scene to find Henry Novak dying of stab wounds and saying, I don't think you have, mate, while they clearly believed every single word that was said by his killer and his brother. Harry Miller, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Julia.
It's been fascinating how much this story has run and run, not just the battles we've got the United States between various different people, but also the number of people who are saying that even sort of talking about aspects of this is divisive. The Prime Minister thinks everyone's divisive apart from himself, obviously. But we've got police watchdog on race. I mean, the fact that we have a police watchdog on race, led by Abimbola Johnson. She says that the police force's efforts to combat institutional racism have not gone far enough. The progress in tackling racism has been too slow, too inconsistent and too poorly embedded. There needs to be more improvement in what she called anti-racist policing. And said that actually the backlash claiming it caricatured preferential treatment over white people is untrue. We've got a Scotland Yard whistleblower, Rick Pryor, former chair of the Metropolitan Police Federation, saying Scotland Yard is captured by a woke mind virus. We've got not just Hampshire Police involved in Henry Novak's death, their advice on basically clear guidance. You do not treat all races the same because that would not lead to equal outcomes. How bad is this problem of trying to tackle old, long-standing problems of anti-black and brown racism in the police with kind of turning it on its head into anti-white racism.
Yeah, that's exactly it. One has to ask oneself, what was the purpose of the Macpherson report?
Yeah.
It seems to me as though it was a complete and utter waste of time. That happened, a quarter of a century ago, and the police are still trying to deal with their own guilt about the death of Stephen Lawrence. Well, I'm not being funny, but it's time to get over it. It's absolutely time to get over that. That's a quarter of a century old story. And what we don't want to do, and this is what's happened, Julia, is that they've completely ignored the lessons from Macpherson, and they've retrained their racist sites upon white people.
Yeah.
It's an absolute appalling thing that the police have done. And that's the only explanation. When anybody joins the police, they do so for the right reasons. They do so because they want to catch criminals.
That would be a mad idea. They should try that sometime.
Exactly. That's why they join up. But then DEI departments get hold of them. And through a deliberate process, they squeeze out of their brains every ounce of humanity and every ounce of common sense, to the point that when they are faced with a person in a turban who shouts, "He's just been racist to me," and then you've got a white person on the floor who says, "I'm bleeding to death," your instinct, your training is to believe the person in the turban and completely ignore the person who is crying out for
and the craziness of that is they could have believed the guy, they could have believed Digwa and still treated Henry Novak. But this absolute, just sort of blinded vision where you've got to treat, white person bad, brown person good. I mean, that's how we've all interpreted it. Now, that may not be what those people were thinking. They were just inexperienced. I mean, they were sodding useless anyway. I mean, no amount of police officers who, past and present, who've told me on and off there, your basic medical training, you would check, you pull up the jumper at the very least, you'd have seen the stab wound, and they didn't even do that. Is absolutely shocking. And we don't know whether or not they realistically would have been able to save his life anyway, but they could at least have given him a few more minutes of being alive, thinking at least someone was there to look after him and not to condemn him and believe his killer standing over him. But the thing about this is that what a lot of us don't understand is that, police officers are just like the rest of us. You're representative of normal society. That's, policing by consent. How has this, and it is a mind virus, how has this taken over so much? We see it in academia. Bunch of absolute lunatics now on virtually every issue. Trans, Israel, the race bigotry, the so-called anti-racism. See it a lot in our civil service. I think a lot of us thought the police were just full of rather more sensible people who wouldn't fall for this. Is it just that you haven't got a choice? And if you're a police officer, you've got to play along with it. In which case, are they all pretending to play along with the madness of this theory, this complete nonsense theory, critical race theory, or do they actually believe it?
Well, I think the older ones, what they tend to do is keep their mouth shut or leave or take early retirement. The young ones come in and they believe what they're being told because they joined up for the right reasons. They're being presented by people who claim to be experts on these subject matters. And they honestly go in there believing that the very worst thing you could possibly be is right up there with paedophilia and armed robbery is to be a racist. And their priority is to investigate the claim of racism over and above everything else. Now, the number one priority of all police officers is the preservation of life, then the protection of property, and way down that list is the detection of crime. They've got their priorities completely out of sorts, and that hasn't happened by accident. That has been done deliberately. Now, this is going to sound a little extreme, Julia, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think that the anti-terrorist unit, Prevent, needs to be visiting every DEI office in every constabulary in the country, because it's gone from being stupid and a joke to being, frankly, absolutely dangerous.
I couldn't agree with you more.
The people who are spreading this dangerous ideology, this mind virus amongst otherwise good coppers, they need confronting, they need to give account. And the agency to do that is Prevent. If you can justify going to the house of a 14-year-old autistic boy because he shot a foam arrow in his garden in the nature of preventing terrorism, you can knock on the door of a DEI office and say, I want to see all your material. I want to see all your sources. I want to know what you are training our officers in, because it is not natural. It's not human.
And again, but also, crucially, it is anti-racism isn't not being racist. It's literally constantly thinking about nothing but race and dividing people. When people talk about division, that's what is dividing people. I grew up, and look, we're around the same generation. At a time when we were just, less and less was it. I had a long-term black boyfriend for a year and a half. I can remember not a single instance where there was any comment in the street or any comment about anybody, and that was when we were talking late 80s here, early 90s. Not a single instance. It was becoming really normalised and not an issue, and then suddenly it becomes a massive, massive issue. But I just want to raise one other thing with you. The Iceland supermarket founder, Sir Malcolm Walker, I think he's the dad of Richard Walker, the current owner, but he's accused police of two-tier policing himself over false claims of racism. And he said basically they've had a case where they've had an Asian senior manager tackling a man who happened to be black, who was basically tampering with stuff in the supermarket, and he said, look, can you get out of here? That man then called the police, the black man, claiming he'd been racially abused. He had not been. The police arrived, literally hauled the manager out, just didn't even ask for his version of events, handcuffed him, took him away for 3 hours. But he said they turned up within 3 minutes. He said, if we've literally called them and say, we've got someone ransacking the shop, violently shoplifting, they've punched a security guard or whatever, police don't even turn up. So they'll turn up for one crime and not the other. And that tells you what they think is the priority.
Yeah, and normal people don't think that is priority. Exactly. This is why I say, Julia, they've been taught this. Yeah. They've had all the common sense squeezed out of them at risk of their jobs. Yeah. You can see it in Hampshire. Anybody in Hampshire who resisted, they were told to retrain. In West Yorkshire, if you resist, you get sacked.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. They learn the lesson. So, as you said, you keep your mouth shut or you retire, and we'll end up losing all, frankly, the brave and the sensible people. Harry Miller, thank you very much. I wish you were still back in the force. Coming up next, we're going to talk to former Labour MP Carl Turner. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. You already knew that. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. You knew that already. Whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, your connected device, thank you for joining us. If you've missed anything from the show, do go to my YouTube page, Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking about, national polls and local polls. Reform UK has widened its lead over Labour to 9 points in the national polls, but crucial Makerfield by-election is coming up where it does look like Andy Burnham, the Labour candidate, is in line to win that. However, how soon after he wins, if he does, will we see a challenge to the Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who's clearly trying to sort of get ahead of things by talking about various different aspects of a social media ban under 16s using social media. We're expecting to hear that within the next week or so as a way of him showing perhaps that he's on top of things, being Mr. Dynamic. Or is it just going to be his legacy? And just because something's popular with people who perhaps don't understand how these things work, is that still a good idea for policy? Plus, we're going to be talking more about, the sort of war of words we've seen between the US and the Brits when it comes to Henry Novak's murder and the role of the police, and criticism of the Americans for putting their tuppence worth in from the likes of David Lammy and Keir Starmer, despite them having plenty to say about everything going on in American politics, and in particular the police's role in the murder of George Floyd back in 2020. Going to talk more about what's going on between Israel and Iran, and the White House considering a plan to buy the Chagos Islands, potentially sinking Starmer's plan to cede the territory's sovereignty to Mauritius. But it could save us some money, but knowing how useless ALA are, we'll still end up paying an absolute fortune for it. But there we are. Delighted to say Claire Pearsall is joining us. She's former Conservative Government Advisor. Afternoon to you.
Afternoon.
Always great to get your thoughts and everything. Asking people to get in touch. Lots of you on the phone lines about various different topics, but particularly about David Lammy. He says he had a phone call with JD Vance, the US Vice President. They're friends. No one can work out why, but they are. And he told JD Vance he was wrong for blaming Henry Novak's death on the mass invasion of migrants. Now, of course, the man who killed Henry Novak was a British-born citizen. But the argument from JD Vance and indeed other Americans has been that actually it's about sort of the civilizational sort of suicide of this country as a result of mass immigration. I rather think JD Vance has got a point. Love to hear your thoughts on that and your thoughts on what the government is looking at doing in terms of social media bans for children. Not an all-over ban like Australia, which hasn't worked. Prime Minister announced today that he wants tech companies to introduce device-level controls to prevent kids from taking, sharing or viewing nude images. A majority of the images of children on the internet, which are nude or sexualised, are actually selfies taken by the kids, often coerced. And there's easily available tech using AI to stop them from even being able to take the photo, let alone actually send it to someone. He says if they don't act, we will. Oh, has he suddenly found his cojones to actually take on the tech companies? Is this the answer, though? Love to hear your thoughts on all of those different topics. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Text us on 87222, or you can send us a message on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network. Rate message. Claire Pearsall, before we go to our first guest in this hour, Carl Turner, I must ask you about, we've got these latest polls, and there's no doubt at all, in terms of the popularity of Keir Starmer, he is way at the bottom. I mean, he's like, was it minus 42 or something, approval ratings. They have this thing where people approve, people disapprove, and then you end up with a number. For most politicians, it's a minus all the time. Kemi Badenoch and Zach Polanski, weirdly, people clearly aren't paying attention to anything he says. Currently, he's backing a campaign to get a murdering terrorist out of prison who killed 5 people. I mean, well, basically involved in the plot that killed 5 people. That's Zach Polanski. So good luck, everyone, with that. If you want to support him, then it tells us who you are, let's be honest. But Kemi Badenoch is doing very well. You're a Tory. Yep. She's a Tory leader. She got mass approval for her handling of her reaction to the Henry Novak case. Lots of approval and disapproval of Nigel Farage, of course, over that. Perhaps some people thought he went a bit too far. He was accused of stirring up division. But there's no doubt at all that the Tories are not making any headway in the national polls at all, and looks like not in Makerfield either in this by-election on the 18th of June. But she's doing very well, popularity-wise and approval-wise. Reform, though, 9 points ahead of Labour nationally, but looking set to lose according to the polls, according to word on the street, lose this by-election, in part down to the fact that Andy Burnham is such a popular figure as being a great Manchester Mayor, and Safe Labour seat and Restore Britain are taking votes on the right, which are splitting the right vote. How, in terms of where the country goes from here, if Burnham does get in, what happens next?
Well, I mean, that's the really big question, is to... Should there be a period of him getting into Parliament, settling in as an MP again before anything else happens? Or, as the rumour on the street is, that Andy Burnham, would look to challenge the Prime Minister within a couple of weeks. Now, I think that would be rash and bonkers, to be perfectly blunt. Have they not learnt from the Conservative Party the... sheer chaos that is going to come their way if they get rid of their leader so soon? Because we did it and it didn't always work out so well.
Because it's not necessarily about the personality.
It's not about the personality. It's not about the name that's there.
Not that Keir Starmer has a personality.
Well, yes.
But anyway,
yes, a slightly wooden one.
You don't think that's not going to be the answer to everything that they think it is?
No, absolutely isn't. It isn't their sort of silver bullet, and I think that they would be best to wait. For my own personal belief, I think that Keir Starmer is better serving in number 10 for the Conservative Party, because the more he stays, the longer he stays, the better results
there you are then.
get.
Right, well, I wonder if our next guest agrees. I'd love to hear from you on this as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Carl Turner was, until very recently, a Labour MP for Hull East, now sits as an independent, having been turfed out for being rather too outspoken. We like outspoken on this show. Carl Turner, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Julia.
First of all, how do you rate Andy Burnham's chances in the Makerfield by-election, and how soon do you think he will, if he does win, again, still an if, do you think he'll make his leadership bid?
Well, I've spoken to Andy in the last few days, and he is not taking anything for granted. He says to me, it's not easy on the doorstep. We've got a challenge, and the challenge is not Labour Party per se, but it's more about Keir Starmer. That's the reality of what's happening on the doorstep in my patch in Hull East. Look, people are happy with the direction of government. We did a lot wrong very early on, in my view, and that stuck with the electorate. But the real thing that people talk to me about is Keir Starmer. It's not something I'm happy about, but it just happens to be the truth. Now, will Burnham win? I think he will win. I don't think he'll win by a big majority. I think he'll be a bit of a squeeze, and I think that we will win that election, and Burnham will become the leader of the Labour Party in the next probably few months. I think the idea that he can waltz into Downing Street is for the birds. I think he needs to sit tight a little bit, but I do think he should be in there fairly rapidly.
Why? And by an election or a coronation? Because there's been a lot of talk that, look, he's the answer. Everyone knows apparently in Labour, he's the answer. In which case, why have a bitter election contest? Now, he may not be able to decide this, because if someone does get the 81 requisite votes, they will be able to stand for the leadership against him. Keir Starmer has said, you know, he's automatically on the ballot anyway as the sitting leader, that he would run for it. Again, every leader says that. Whether they actually would, if all of the cabinet said we're backing Andy Burnham, that might be a little bit embarrassing. But the reality is, you know, Andy Burnham, he could end up with a coronation. Didn't work out so well when Gordon Brown took over the leadership from Tony Blair, did it?
Well, my view, Julia, is that we shouldn't be looking for a coronation. We should have a debate in the Labour Party. The tragedy, of course, is this. The electorate are not involved in that discussion. And in July 2024, they gave the Labour Party a mandate. It was not a resounding, sort of excitable, enthusiastic mandate for a Labour government. It was about getting rid of the Tories. So we have to be a bit careful and a little bit respectful of the electorate, in my view. So coronation for me would be contemptuous. I think there should be a debate in the Labour Party. But of course, it's not terribly democratic, because it's Labour Party members who are deciding.
Well, hold on a minute. That is democratic. I mean, the British public don't get to say over who the leader of a party is. You get to decide that, and then people can decide to vote. But we didn't vote. We don't have a presidential system, and people can forget this. We don't elect a prime minister. We elect our local MP, leader of a party, and the leader of that party, whoever it is just. The question is like how much divergence from the manifesto any new leader would make. But, as you say, I mean, what mandate do they have? I mean, it said change. No one's quite sure what it is. Keir Starmer has already reneged on crucial things like not putting taxes up on working people, and national insurance is clearly a tax on working people. Here's the thing, though. Is Andy Burnham going to make a big difference? Because there's even been talk about how he'd want to have a general election so he could get his own mandate. But to do what? Because we've heard so much about Manchesterism, whatever the hell that is. A lot of the claims about Manchester's economic miracle, not an economic miracle, not really much evidence it's had much to do with any of his policies, and it's anything like he says. When he was asked the other day on Newsnight, and the clip is excruciating, and they said, all right, you're not going to drop Rachel Reeves' fiscal rules. So what are those fiscal rules if you're standing by them? And he said, well, I'm not going to do like an exam on the policies. It was blatantly obvious to anyone who watched that video that he didn't know what the fiscal rules were. Now, he wants to be Prime Minister, but as far as I can tell, he has no plan about what he wants to do other than just be better at communication and wear T-shirts instead of shirts and ties like Keir Starmer. But does anyone have a clue what he's actually going to do if he does become Prime Minister that is any different from what we've got right now?
Well, Andy Burnham's not an economist, and nor am I.
You don't have to be an economist.
Well, that's the first point. Right, the second point is this. The reason Burnham will be more popular is because he's actually charismatic. He has got something about him.
Yes, I agree.
He's got the charisma. So
he speaks human. He speaks human.
He speaks like a normal guy. Right, you could go to the pub. If I was going to go to the pub with... Look, Keir Starmer was a pal of mine, by the way, but if I was going to be invited to the boozer, would I go with Boris Johnson or Keir Starmer? I'd pick Boris Johnson every day. Yeah. Because I'm going to come out of the pub with a few pints down me and I've had a jolly good time while I've been with him. That's the reality. So that is the difference between Burnham and Keir Starmer. But Burnham is popular, Julia, because he's not been damaged by the 2 years of a Labour government.
Well, but that's it. He's
not been in the cabinet.
He's not been damaged by having to make the difficult choices. The reason why things are going so badly in the economy and badly as government is that the government is not prepared to make the difficult choices that need to be made economically. Well, what evidence do we have that Andy Burnham is?
Well, look, I know Burnham very well. I know him very well indeed. I was involved very heavily in his campaign in 2015, his unsuccessful campaign.
One of his two unsuccessful campaigns.
Yeah, with one of his two. In fact, I was involved in 2010 a little bit, but a lot more involved in 2015. I know him very well. I've seen him make decisions which are very difficult decisions, which actually damaged his campaign. But he did it because he was principled.
No, he did it because he was flip-flopping.
Well,
he was called Flip-Flop Andy in Westminster.
Oh, that's the term people give politicians, the media and so on. But the reality is I do know Burnham, and I think he'll be an impressive leader.
OK, so what's he going to do differently? Other than be able to talk a bit more human and communicate better, which is a crucial part of the job. Well, I mean, Keir Starmer comes on the telly and genuinely the entire nation just goes... click, turn it off, can't listen to it. Andy Burnham is very likeable. I agree with you, he's got that charisma. Is there any... And he's actually a clever bloke. But is there any evidence that he has a plan?
Well, yes, and that's the point. You've hit the nail on the head for me, because the truth of the matter is this. We had 14 years in opposition. We knew we were going to win the election when things started to go wrong for the Tories. Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and then poor old Rishi Sunak comes along, and it was far too late for Rishi to do anything about it. That was the reality. We knew we were going to be in government, but the reality is we didn't have a plan. We came in with a manifesto which didn't say a great deal. It promised some good stuff, and we've delivered on it. But the reality is we did not have a plan for government. I know that Andy Burnham has a plan.
What's his plan?
I'm not going to give any secrets
away
it's a
now. Secret plan.
But there are
when will we find out what his plan is?
There are things, Julia, that have been going on in the background where members of Parliament have been working on policy, working hard on policy, to give Andy Burnham a chance, if he gets into government, into number 10 Downing Street, to get going fairly swiftly with a plan for government. And that's what we need to do.
But so you know as well as I do there is no money. The government, the Prime Minister can't even find the money for spending, vital spending on defence that he's actually promised. There is no money. The welfare bill is going sky high. You know, we're going to have to be no doubt subsidising energy bills in the near future. There is no money. And the Labour backbenchers will be exactly the same, whether it's Andy Burnham in number 10 or Keir Starmer in number 10 or Angela Rayner or Wes Streeting. And they will not allow, despite his 400 majority or 400 MPs, 170 majority, they will not allow any Prime Minister to cut welfare, which is one of the number one things they need to do.
I don't think that's right. This idea that Matt Fadden has been having meetings with Parliamentary Labour Party members and they've been saying to him, who do we tax harder in order to pay more benefits, I think is for the birds.
You think
because
he's lied?
I don't recall any... I'm not saying he's a liar, but he's had a conversation potentially with one or two people, and he's interpreted it as the wanting to cut
we've had one vote in Parliament about cutting the not even cutting the welfare bill, cutting the increase in the welfare bill by £5 billion.
I agree.
And the Prime Minister couldn't even get that through.
There's a way of taking.
Can Andy Burnham do that?
Yes, and that's my point. There's a way
you think Andy Burnham is going to win over Labour MPs and Labour Party members who are far to the left of him and the Prime Minister by saying we're going to cut welfare? Are you living in cloud cuckoo land?
No, I'm not in cloud cuckoo land. I'm in reality. Let me tell you the situation. The way the job has been managed by Keir Starmer and number 10 Downing Street is my way or the highway. If you don't like it, there's the front door. That or the back door, rather. That's the attitude of this management of the Parliamentary Labour Party. Burnham's got a different style about him. He'll take people with him. He'll roll the pitch. He'll speak the reality of where we are on the numbers. People will be given the opportunity to discuss the issues. We'll be given the chance to debate the issues. And then we will make a decision.
Well, I mean, that would be great if we had that.
Julia, and the Cabinet will be a cabinet of all the party. It'll be the left and the right. And all the party.
Kumbaya, my lord, kumbaya. I can just see gambling lambs, little castles in the sky, the clouds. I mean, it's just the sun is shining everywhere. It's going to be wonderful. I love your optimism.
It's about management. It's about party management, honestly.
Well, I mean, no one could be worse at it. No one could be worse at it than Keir Starmer. He's got to be better at that stuff. I just think this is a party that can't be managed because it doesn't accept economic reality. And there's no evidence at all that Andy Burnham understands economics enough to be able to push that reality. Can I ask you about something else there? We've got union boss, we've got Gary Smith of the GMB union, a very important union, telling off basically blaming Labour's net zero agenda for driving his members towards Reform UK. We saw a poll last week suggesting that actually an awful lot of trade union members support reform rather than the Labour Party or other parties on the left. Bit of a surprise to lots of very left-wing, sometimes even communist union members. But he basically says it's net zero. Net zero is putting up energy prices, pushing away manufacturing, cutting jobs in the oil and gas industry, and it's a policy that's got to go. Do you think that Andy Burnham might be the leader who could drop net zero?
I don't think he'll drop net zero, but I think Gary Smith and other trade union leaders unite. Tell me the same stuff. Sharon tells me that there's a problem with membership. They're going to reform. But I think it's a multitude of policies. The welfare benefits bill, which is bursting at the seams. Make no mistake about that.
Come back to the net zero.
Hang on, let me come back to that in a second. But people who go to graft in the morning feel let down by governments who pay people to stay at home and not do a job.
We talked about
That's
that.
what gets up the nostril. Net zero, for me, in my area, where we've got Siemens making wind turbine blades, it's a big employer for me. It's a popular thing to be involved in clean energy in my patch. Hence the fact that the Reform Mayor of Hull and the East Riding of Yorkshire, Luke Campbell, is saying he supports the policy on net zero, but what he's not keen on is people's bills being pushed up. Now, you can't have your cake and eat it.
No, you can't.
You've got to come to a point where you decide what you're going to do. My view is we ought to be extending licences in the North Sea. I think that's a policy we ought to be embracing, frankly. And I think when the Tories point that stuff out, I've got to agree with them.
All right, then, just finally, and very briefly, if you would, because it's obviously, I know it's a big topic, and I know you've spoken on this station about this before, in terms of these battles between, you know, the Labour leadership, but not just Keir Starmer, but David Lammy and others, with J.D. Vance and others in the American administration, criticising what's happened over Henry Novak and talking about sort of civilisational decline as a result of mass immigration to this country. Whose side are you on?
Look, I'm on the side of the family of Henry Novak, actually.
Yeah,
they wanted people to look at this seriously and be thinking about the policy of knife crime. And that's what I think the Labour Party are doing to an extent. But I saw David Lammy's interview at the weekend and I was genuinely embarrassed. I mean, it was just hypocrisy of the highest order. I felt embarrassed. I was squirming as I was watching the interview because the truth was Keir Starmer went to the dispatch box, as I think he was leader of the opposition at the time, and talked about the death of and the killing of George Floyd. And the hypocrisy that we now have is that J.D. Vance, who is a senior politician in the States, number 2 to the president, is not entitled to have a comment. I disagree with them, but you can't have it both ways. And David Lammy looked embarrassing to me. I frankly think they shouldn't let him on the telly anymore. He's best off being kept at home, having a nice time with his family. Don't go anywhere near the telly, David.
Or taxi drivers.
You embarrass yourself, pal. Stay away from it. That's my advice to number 10 Downing Street for what it's worth. They don't listen to me very often.
They don't, but they should on this one.
They'd be locking him away and keeping him off the telly. It looked appalling. I was embarrassed and I was shouting by the end of it, you just sound like an hypocrite.
Carl Turner, independent MP, no longer a Labour MP. You can probably see why. For Holly, always so good to talk to you. Thank you very much. Pierre Pearsall, and I'm chuckling away to that. I mean, I find David Lammy utterly intolerable on telly. In real life, he can be perfectly, you know, no, but some people have this persona on telly, but he does seem to me to be kind of wrong on everything.
Yes.
But going back to what Carl Turner said about, you know, Andy Burnham, he's charismatic, he's got a plan.
Well, I haven't seen hide nor hair of that.
And he says he's doing he's all about Makerfield now, but then he does mention policies, national policies.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem with the Labour Party. There is no philosophy, and just being told that somebody has one doesn't mean it's actually
I've got a plan. Well, Labour kept saying they had a plan in 24. Change. Okay, what?
Yeah,
well, you know,
Burnham apparently.
I don't know about you. I assumed that they actually did have a plan. They just weren't telling us about it because they were going to say, oh, we haven't got any money, we're going to have to do this or that, because they knew that things were bad and you can't tell the voters the actual truth because they won't vote for you. I know, and that's voters' fault, that's our fault.
Yeah.
But then it's all come out now. It's not just us saying it. It's we've seen it in the messages. They literally didn't have a plan.
No, they sort of turned up on day one and went, what do we do? This is your government, you deal with it.
And despite knowing for at least a year or two they were going to win.
But also they'd had 14 years to plan.
I mean, he was only in power, only in leader for 4 years. But no, it doesn't
matter.
I don't understand why you'd want to be Prime Minister or a cabinet if you don't have a plan. Like, what do you want to do? What do you
believe?
Well, Andy Burnham again, he would not asking, you know, why do you want to be Prime Minister? Give us a reason.
But he can't do that because there is nothing.
Wants to be Prime Minister.
That's about it. He wants to take over.
I want to be Empress and Queen of all I survey. But I don't think that's a good enough reason to vote me in for that job.
Why not? I think you should, because
I'm just saying,
Andy Burnham...
Things would work a lot better. But anyway, because we talked about Makerfield, you know what I have to do now? I'd like to point out that our compliance folk take this stuff rather more obsessively than I hear on any other station where they're allowed to say, just have a look at our website and here's a list of all the candidates. But they make me do this. So I'm going to read this with the tone of voice that I think it deserves. Here are the list of candidates in the Makerfield by-election. Jake Austin, Liberal Democrats. Count Binface Party. Andy Burnham, the Labour Party. Dan Clark, the Libertarian Party. John Dyer, Independent. Ed Gemmell, Climate Party. Paul Gould, Independent. Alan Howling, Lord Hope, the official monster raving loony party. Robert Kenyon, Reform UK. Robert Pownall, Protect the Wild. Rebecca Shepherd, Restore Britain. Sarah Wakefield, Green Party. Peter Ward, Rejoin EU. Michael Winstanley, the Conservative Party. There you go. What? Seriously, look up the candidates. Look up the candidates. All you need to do. 12:26 is the time. I want to hear from you. We'll get your calls up on everything we are talking about. Do you think Andy Burnham does have a plan? Talk about Henry Novak and is that a fallout between the Americans and the Brits? Anything else you want to talk about? Social media bans? If not, who knows what? Love to hear your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. This is Talk.
We are going to remove all forms of DEI from policing. We will also, and we're the only, look, the Labour Party have not committed to this, the Tory Party have not committed to this. Reform are also taking the view that we would immediately ensure that nobody gets to carry deadly weapons on our streets unless you're law enforcement. So I don't care what religion you are. I don't care how ceremonial, in quotes, your dagger is.
So you would
not get to carry. There will be no religious exemption.
Okay. So you would stop the carapan being carried.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:28 is the time. Very much appreciate you joining me. Let's go straight to your calls. I think Alan is on the line in Salford. Hello, Alan. What do you want to talk about?
Good afternoon, Julia.
Afternoon.
Is it morning still? Hang on. Yeah, this by-election in Makersfield, it's actually a benchmark for the people of this country after 2 years of the Labour government. To see if they've come to the senses. Because if I was a constituency in Makersfield, they're being used by the Labour Party. They're not thinking about the constituencies. The MP that resigned didn't resign because he was not well.
No, Josh Simon, although he should have resigned over him smearing of journalists for doing their job looking into what he was up to.
Well, they get away with it, don't they? But, you know, he's not resigned because he's not well. He's resigned for the party. So actually, they don't think of the people in Makersfield or the constituents. They think of the party. This is communism at its best.
Well, it's not No, come on, it's not communism.
Oh, they're very close to communist government.
Well, no, but it is. There's a lot of people saying, look, again, this is about. There's been quite a funny cartoon of Andy Burnham. Vote Andy Burnham for a brighter future for Andy Burnham, a brilliant Mac cartoon in the Telegraph, and that is an issue that actually it's no. This is about and he is a local lad, as indeed lots of the other candidates involved, and I've read them all out. So Robert, I know big thing about Robert Kenyon being Mr. Local Plumber and all that, the Reform candidate. But this is the thing. I mean, Andy Burnham needs to get back into office for him to run for the leadership of the Labour Party. Do you think, though, he is this sort of, for want of a better expression, a great white hope for the Labour Party and everything will change?
No, I don't. He'll go further left. But what I'm trying to say is he's using the people because, if he gets in, then they've got a couple of months he's going to have we'll have to have another by-election, won't they? Yes or no, if he moves to Prime Minister? He can't be MP and a
No, all Prime Ministers are MPs. No, he'll still be the MP for Makerfield.
Now, right? I thought he couldn't be Prime Minister. Oh, yeah.
No,
I get you. Yeah,
no, that's the whole point. They have to be an MP.
Yeah, but he's never actually
you daft old fish, you, Alan. What you like?
He's never actually stood in Makersfield or that area for a seat.
No, but he was MP in the local area, in a neighbouring seat, and he went to school. I mean, so no, he's got perfectly good. He's not just been parachuted in. And by the way, there are plenty of very good MPs who are not local people.
Has he ever run a business, Mr.?
No, he very much. he, like most Labour MPs, came up through, you worked for an MP or you worked for a trade union.
Well, this is how they get in, a lot of them. So, Bridget Phillipson, the same, there's a few of them who do it. You know, they start 15,
do you think that's an issue?
Labour Party. Pardon?
Do you think that's an issue?
Of course it is. If you've not done a real job in your life, you know, it's ridiculous. But I think Bridget Phillipson, she left school at 15, joined the Labour Party, and then went working for her mother, who run a social service contract for the government for old people, you know. So, and then she took over that after about a year. Yeah. So this is, no.
I don't think Alan's a fan. I'm going to go out on a limb here. Alan, thank you very much indeed. Guess who's on the line next? This will cheer everyone up. Georgina is in London. Hello, Georgina. What do you want to say?
Hello to my two favourite girls. It's lovely to talk to you. Hello, Claire. Well,
she can't. She's smiling away. She's smiling away. What do you want to say, my love?
Well, it's not often that I would agree with any interference from another country, namely the USA. Yeah. But I think J.D. Vance is absolutely spot on with just how dire the two-tier governance is here in the UK, because quite frankly, Julia, we need all the backup we can muster now. Yeah. And we're not going to see a change in two-tier policing whilst we have a Labour government, because Keir Starmer is so out of touch with the British public. And David Lammy, you know, the lights are on, but nobody's home. He needs to go into a place and stay there and not speak. It's his very policies that are enabling the two-tier crisis to continue, and he has taken away from us every single form of protection, Julia, including our right to voice our concerns or opinions. You know, the police are now terrified of being branded racist if they interrogate or arrest a foreign suspect. It could cost them their job. Now, this is not how policing should work, and white people are dying because of it, Julia. That poor boy, Henry Nowak, a teenager, being only one of the horrific murders that have happened because of the policies put into place.
No, but they're not dying at the hands of the police.
No, not of the police, my darling, but they're dying at the hands of foreign nationals and people who are coming over here.
Vikram Digwa was not a foreign national. He was British.
He was British, but his parents were immigrants, my darling.
I don't know whether his parents were immigrants or grandparents, but
we have got to start being really stringent now on what's going on in this country, because every single mother in the country who has children is now terrified of letting their children out on the streets, and this is not how it should be. The word racist has been bandied about so much against our white population, but it's our white population, Julia, that are the victim of anti-white aggression and racism every day in our streets.
And certainly when you see these adverts, I can almost understand it, you know, 30, 40 years ago, but like, you know, sort of BBC has, you know, or lots of different organisations have these sort of training schemes or diversity, so you can get them if you're, you know, black or Asian, or sometimes you're a woman, if you're gay or claim you're trans or whatever it is, and then, you know, if you actually said we're going to have something for white working class boys who are the most underachieving group in our country, no, can't do that, it's racist.
We're the ones that have to tread on eggshells around foreign nationals within our own country, and it's making our lives very uncomfortable and very unsafe. White lives matter, Julia, as much as any other life, as Nigel Farage stated, and this two-tier governance has got to stop. We need a drastic overhaul, both in the judicial and policing system, starting at the very top, all the way down to the bottom training centres, as the policing we're having at the moment is biased against our white population. It's not working, and deaths will continue if it doesn't change.
Really appreciate that call. Thank you very much. Georgina there in London. 12:35 is the time. Going to go to a quick break, but just breaking news before we do. We are going to be talking about what's going on in Iran and Israel, but Iran has announced an end of the attacks against Israel. Iran's joint military commanders announced the end of those military operations, saying that if Israel carries out any further aggression and hostile acts, including in southern Lebanon against Hezbollah, then much more severe and crushing measures than before will follow. Well, is this positive sign? We'll talk to Andrew Fox about that up next. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:37 is the time. Andrew Fox joins us now. He's a Senior Associate Fellow at the Henry Jackson Society. He's also a former Major in the Parachute Regiment. Good afternoon to you, Andrew.
Hi, Judy.
Well, just as we went to a break, so that breaking news, Iran's Joint Military Command said they've ended their operations against Israel. This follows, of course, tit-for-tat missile strikes between Iran and Israel overnight. Iran saying they were acting because Israel had continued their strikes against Hezbollah in Lebanon in defiance of this ceasefire, which Iran claims should cover Lebanon as well. Israel's been very clear that their issues with Hezbollah are very separate. But the Iran Joint Military Command said that any further aggression, including in southern Lebanon, would trigger stronger retaliation. This, of course, comes after Donald Trump called for both sides to halt fire. He claims that they are close to some sort of ceasefire, although we don't seem to be getting the same impression from the Iranians. Is this good news?
Which parts?
Well, I mean, if Iran is... I mean, Iran has threatened a whole week of strikes, hadn't they?
Yeah, look, it's calibration. This is all calibration that we're seeing at the moment. What they're trying to avoid is an escalatory pathway on both sides. Let's break it down into chunks. You've got the main war against Iran, which we saw result in significant damage to their military capabilities, a number of leaders killed. We then saw Iran respond by closing the Strait of Hormuz. We saw the American response to that by blockading the Iranian blockade. And that's separate slightly from what's going on in Lebanon, which is where the IRGC have led Hezbollah into opening fire on Israel and opening up a second front. So we've got these two separate moving parts. And what I think we're trying to see here is that both sides are under pressure. America's under pressure electorally, they're under pressure economically, and they're under pressure on the munitions side of things because they expended an awful lot of ammunition during the war. Iran is, of course, under pressure domestically and economically as well. And so we're seeing both sides trying to get to some kind of deal. But the Israelis, of course, have this issue in Lebanon that they have to handle. Towns in the north of Israel completely deserted because of the threat of Hezbollah rockets. But Iran is the bridging gap between the two. So Iran can keep escalating in Lebanon whilst trying to tell Trump they're trying to make a deal in the Gulf. And this enables Iran to drag out these negotiations and try and get themselves a better deal from Trump.
Indeed. How sure are we? We know that it's the IRGC in Iran that funds and supplies and Hezbollah. But how sure are we that they are completely in control of Hezbollah, given that there seems to be some evidence that the central command in Iran is not completely in control of all of their forces in Iran? But if they say, stop firing, end of, disband, or whatever they said, would that actually happen, or is Hezbollah to a certain extent a law unto itself?
Yeah, it would. Look, Hezbollah started in 1982 onwards through to 85, that period where they formed a bunch of Shia militias into something that we see today. And it's always been an Iranian direct proxy. It's different to Hamas, it's different to the Houthis, who are kind of allies that take Iranian support. Hezbollah are a direct proxy that are controlled by Tehran, to the point where, since Israel killed so many Lebanese Hezbollah commanders, the Iranians have put actual IRGC Iranian commanders into their command structure.
Right, it's that close. They do have that control. A lot of the discourse about this, and certainly on our mainstream media in this country, BBC and Sky being the worst offenders on this, I find myself just screaming at the radio and the television, is that we have these reports like, wake up this morning and be like, Israel has fired weapons against Iran, and as if this is some sort of out of the blue. Well, why would they do that? Well, because Iran has fired weapons on them, and Iran says, well, that's because Israel has fired into Lebanon and indeed into Beirut further north in Lebanon, and again, as if they did that out of the blue, as opposed to because they faced 3 years now of constant rocket attacks from Hezbollah. Everything is framed as Iran has somehow being forced to act against Israel, and Israel being the perpetrator, and constantly this idea that Israel has dragged Donald Trump and America into this war and is trying to stop the war from ending because they have different aims, strategic and military and others, than America does. Is any of that actually true?
No, I don't think so. Look, it's not as if Israel woke up on 8th of October 2023 and decided to start firing into Lebanon.
Yeah.
We have to remember that once 7th of October happened, this was designed to be part of a much larger plan.
Yeah.
Iran spent over a decade putting a noose around Israel that they were going to try and activate at some point in the future. Unfortunately for Iran, Hamas activated it far too soon.
Yeah.
But this was always part of the design, was to pressure Israel on multiple fronts. So when people obsess about the Gaza war, or report about Lebanon, and they look at it in isolation, they're making a complete category error. You have to see this as one piece, and it all starts with Tehran. It all starts with the Iranian regime. I can guarantee you that Israel would stop firing if their northern towns and kibbutzim were safe. But they're not. You know, I was up there earlier this year. You can see just how close they are to that Lebanese border. In Majd al-Shams, when a number of Druze children were killed back in 2024, the flight time of the missile that killed them was 4 seconds from launch to impact. You know, that's not enough to keep people safe. And so Israel is quite understandably trying to keep pushing Hezbollah back out of rocket and direct fire missile range. I don't really see that Israel has any other choice unless the international community wants to step in for peacekeeping operations with a real mandate, which they don't.
Which they were supposed to have done. And it is fascinating to see that our Foreign Secretary, the Yvette Cooper, and of course our Prime Minister, everyone's saying, calling for restraint. Oh yeah, absolutely. As if you know, a militia in France or indeed Francis or Germany fired rockets into British territory. Yeah, we would all be talking about restraint right now. It is utterly bizarre how it's the same people who will say Israel should act with restraint, and at the same time they will justify the horrors of October the 7th or the Iranian strikes on anyone and everyone on the basis of that, well, they were provoked. It's almost like it's just one rule for one and one rule for the other, isn't it?
It is. And look, there's another sort of aspect of this we're not talking about, and that is Hezbollah threats to media organisations. So they're very well on record to say, if you report certain things in the south, we will threaten your journalists in Beirut.
Yeah.
So
as they were doing in Gaza.
Exactly that. And so there's a whole very, very well-organised information campaign by Iran and its allies against Israel. And it's been incredibly effective for 2 years. And this is effectively where we are now, that you can say literally anything about the Jewish state. But for some reason, the terrorists who oppose them are almost innocent in the way they're presented.
Well, here's an interesting. Let's talk about very briefly Zach Polanski. I know you keep up on social media as well. The Green Party leader was spotted wearing a T-shirt supporting saying, you know, was it Free Marwan, reference to Marwan Barghouti, a Palestinian terrorist. He's been convicted of being part of a plot that murdered 5 civilians, including a monk, for goodness sake. He's been in prison for 25 years. He refused to take part in the trial himself, but has never expressed any remorse. But extraordinary, Zach Polanski said, yeah, let's talk about Marwan Barghouti. In prison for 25 years, he says an Interparliamentary Union report found he was not given a fair trial. There's no evidence for this. And he quotes Nelson Mandela, saying, what is happening to Barghouti is exactly the same as what happened to me, Free Marwan. Now, as terrorists who killed civilians is not exactly the same as Nelson Mandela. B, Nelson Mandela never actually said these words. This is a complete false claim. But we've got somebody who's convicted of killing 5 civilians, convicted terrorist. We've got one of our major party leaders literally wearing a T-shirt saying this man should be freed. What do you make of that?
Well, it's part of the Greens' continued policy to try and pull in the radically alienated Muslim votes. It's very straightforward. We've seen evidence of WhatsApp groups pushing nothing but Gaza as an election issue in certain constituencies, and the Greens have woken up to that, and they're tapping into it. And we're well past the point now where you can just invent anything about Israel and people will accept it as true.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing. And, you know, you couple that with Polanski's call to put Jews returning from the IDF on lists.
Yeah.
You know, there's no call for people coming back from Sudan to do that.
Or Ukraine.
No call or Ukraine, or indeed any other country or conflict in the world. And actually, I'd be more sympathetic to Polanski if he had said everyone who's fought for a foreign army should come back. I mean, he hasn't even talked about people who fought for, you know, in Syria.
ISIS,
or ISIS putting on this. And yet he's applying this so
a list of Jews.
It doesn't matter that he's Jewish himself.
No, it's exactly.
There's a long track record of Jews throwing their own people under the bus. This is disgusting. It's double standards, and it should be called out by any sensible politician. And frankly, it disbars Zach Polanski from any serious conversation on this topic.
I find it absolutely. It is actually fascinating to look at some of the personal polling and seeing actually as soon as people were exposed to him. And actually things he said and done and his lies about his past, that actually he's plummeting in the polls, and one hopes that the British people have woken up to that. Just finally, I want to ask you, I mean, it's just finally crazy, this is a huge big topic, but obviously developments in Iran overnight in Israel have moved it down the list, but lots of reports in the last few days and weeks and months, I mean, of how little defence we've got. We've got all of our attack subs apparently all in port, unable to be there even to help defend our Trident submarines, which are absolutely vital part of the Western defence, not even just our defence. We're told there's our nuclear jets are at risk in defence spending plans. We're still waiting. We're told this week we should be getting this defence spending plan. Prime Minister can't find any money for it, watering it down, cuts here, cuts there. Even the 18 billion quid he's promising to spend in total more by the end of the decade, it doesn't even touch the sides of our needs. Ex-NATO chiefs warning that basically if you don't spend now, then we will basically pay our cost in blood. Doesn't matter how many warnings there are, the government doesn't seem to be listening.
Well, there was money apparently in the defence budget to hand Labour a hand grenade with the pin pulled when it comes to defence, unfortunately. This is not just Labour's problem.
They've inherited, absolutely.
For probably 16 years now, since the cuts in 2010 that I remember all too well when I was in uniform. And I was trying to find people to go on exercise and they were all on redundancy lists.
Yeah.
So this is the end state of a long, slow process of internal erosion. You can maintain the facade of a building as you pull bricks out from the brickwork, but as soon as you pull out one brick too many, the whole thing will come crashing down. And that's really what we're seeing now. Yeah. We've been robbing Peter to pay Paul for far too long in defence. And what it needs is a massive injection of cash. And even that won't solve it overnight.
No.
So we've seen successive governments utterly neglecting defence, or in some cases actively downgrading our defences. And here we are, in a massive period of threat and instability, starting the race from 200 metres behind the start line.
Genuinely terrifying. Andrew Fox, always so good to talk to you. Thank you so much. Clip Isley, you always point out, you come from a military family. I mean, how many former defence chiefs, MI5 chiefs, NATO Secretary General, I mean, how many people can say we are in crisis, for the love of God, spend some money on defence and get us some actual ability to defend our interests?
It doesn't matter. They can keep saying it till they're blue in the face, and they're right to do so. But the Prime Minister has got to make some really hard decisions about where he's going to cut funding. Absolutely.
Welfare, there you go. Solved it for you, done. But again, like these submarines, these are the submarines that protect our underwater cabling, vital. I'm thinking, I saw the stories yesterday, I thought, is it a good idea to flag to the Russians or the Iranians that is unattended? And I'm thinking, they've already knew it was. They're the ones who are monitoring it. I mean, it's genuinely, and we're going, John Healey's giving them a stern word. Really is very, very scary. Coming up next, we are going to talk about is there going to be a social media ban or not? What is the Prime Minister looking at? We'll talk to Jennifer Powers from the Unplugged Coalition. First up, though, it really is here. The FIFA World Cup kicks off this week, and our friends at TalkSport are sending you and a mate straight to New York City with Adidas, the tournament's official match ball supplier. It's the ultimate trip to watch England face Panama live at the MetLife Stadium. Return flights, hotel, match tickets and spending money all taken care of. Plus, Adidas is throwing in the official Trayonda match ball and a fresh pair of boots. So don't miss out. Here's how to enter.
For your chance to win, head to our friends at talksportwin.com or text TALK to 83338. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network rate, or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close on the 12th of June 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talksportwin.com. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
We are going to remove all forms of DEI from policing. We will also, and we're the only, look, the Labour Party have not committed to this, the Tory Party have not committed to this. Reform are also taking the view that we would immediately ensure that nobody gets to carry deadly weapons on our streets unless you're law enforcement. So I don't care what religion you are. I don't care how ceremonial, in quotes, your dagger is.
So you would stop
There
the
will be no religious exemption.
Okay, so you would stop the Carapan being carried.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's talk about a social media ban. Front page of the Times today suggests that the Prime Minister is moving towards a full social media ban for under 16s. Others are saying, oh no, it's not going to go that far. Today he was speaking at a big tech conference in London where he said, and posted it in a tweet afterwards, this government will not stand by while children are put at risk online. Today I'm calling on the tech companies to introduce device-level controls to prevent children from taking, sharing or viewing nude images. And if they don't act, we will. Well, let's talk about this all with Jennifer Powers. She's the director of Unplugged Coalition. Good afternoon to you, Jennifer.
Good afternoon,
Thank
Julia.
you for joining us. Now, I have to say, I completely agree with this tech control, which is easy, available right now. AI can do it, which will prevent any child from taking a selfie, sending it to anybody. You literally can't physically take a picture of yourself if you are nude. But frankly, this could have been done years ago. This tech's been around for a good few years now, hasn't it?
Yeah, there's a wonderful British startup that actually pioneered this technology.
I believe we interviewed them at the time.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, so this technology, as you say, it's been around for a little while, and it's something that it just seems like total common sense. As you said, the technology means that a child cannot view nude images, or share nude images, so it really stops.
I mean, it seems to be like, basic
pornography.
Child safety 101, tick, next. But this is something apparently that the former Home Office Minister Jess Phillips was trying to get him to do, couldn't even get a reply from the Prime Minister for a year on it, and she claims this is part of the reason why she's resigned. I think it's more about Jess Phillips. But Keir Starmer has had this big consultation which ended last week over a social media ban, or looking at what the options are. So there's definitely going to be action. We know there's going to be action. He wanted to see what happened in Australia. Now, we know the social media ban for under 16s in Australia has left the majority of under 16s still on social media, not even having to go onto the dark web. We know that a lot of the charities who really look after children's interests and have looked into this say that actually a social media ban isn't the way to keep children safe. What do you think he should do at your organisation?
Well, there's a lot in those questions, Julia. I mean, I was really heartened by his speech today because he came out with some really strong language that I agreed with. He said that that tech should adopt to society, not the other way around. And he said that bringing in these device level controls was not an impossible challenge. And I thought that's right. Absolutely, we can be we have agency on this. We can actually protect our kids. And then he disappointed me by saying that he was calling on tech companies to bring in these device level controls voluntarily. And if not, then he would act. So I was sort of led up the hill and really,
disappointed. Because that thing is, at the end of the day, we're looking at, they're going to take a year to talk about it, and then he'd take a year about it, and he won't even be in power then. Who are we kidding? This is the thing. Right. A lot of people apparently in this country, particularly parents, support a ban on children having social media. These are the parents who, by the way, sit at the table every single day with their kids, sit on their phones themselves, with their kids on their phones themselves, and then go, why will no one do anything about it? And my answer is, well, you just could put your phone away, put your kids' phone away, read to your kids, talk to your kids, play ball with your kids, do anything other than sit on your phones. But it's a popular move. But does it actually solve anything? Because at the end of the day, kids will get round this.
Well, kids will get around it, but the reason that I've been campaigning with millions of parents across the country backing me, really, for restrictions to social media for under 16s is because, yes, we know parents have a role to play. Absolutely, they need to parent their children. But also, this is a collective action problem. And why is it that we have just given away power to the tech companies to steal the attention of our children, to really destroy their childhoods. And so, you know, I'm thinking, no, we don't have to put up with this.
And how would those restrictions work? Because here's the thing, people love a ban. People love things being banned that don't bother them or they don't use themselves.
Well, that's a good question, and the devil really is in the details,
and this
Julia,
is the thing,
we don't
isn't
know
it?
that yet.
But do we, I mean...
one of the options...
Okay, carry on. Apologies, carry on.
No, it's okay. Yeah, so if it follows the Australian model, then it would almost have a brand approach.
Yeah.
So you'd have, you know, 6 or 8 or however many brands that were caught by regulations, and they would be restricted
but then a new social media company comes
Then a new one pops up. So what parents have been asking for is something which is a features-based ban, which says if you have any of these addictive by design features on your platform, you as the tech company have a choice. You can either take away those addictive by design features, and therefore the platform remains open for everyone, or should you wish to keep them, which I assume most, if not all of them will, because of course they make money off our attention, then they will have to bring in age assurance measures, which is a way of age gating these platforms by the back door.
Well, exactly. The trouble with that, of course, is that infringes, you know, the freedom of adults, because to identify children, by definition, you have to identify someone as being an adult
I
as well.
agree with you, but I think there's a real answer to that, which is, you know, we create age gating in all sorts of situations. You do not let children join the army or get a driver's license or purchase alcohol. So I personally don't have an issue with age gating and adults.
But that's not about freedom of speech and access to information, and that's a different thing.
Well, I'm not sure it is. I mean, there's a lot of horrific stuff on the internet. There's pornography.
Yeah, no, I know. I realise. But nevertheless, people's access to, say, social media and information that they wouldn't have. And this is a Prime Minister who, by the way, thinks that 16-year-olds should be able to vote.
Well,
but apparently...
on that, I disagree with him. Look, I understand there are civil liberty issues at play here, and some of your guests and some of your viewers may have concerns about that, understandably so. But at the end of the day, these tech platforms do know how to do age assurance.